Introduction. The Buddha Buddho, or Enlightened One-Lit, Knower or Awakened One-Lits, the honorific name given to the Indian sage Gautama, who discovered and proclaimed to the world the law of deliverance. Known to the West by the name of Buddhism, he was born in the 6th century BC at Kapilavatthu as the son of the king who ruled the Sakya country, a principality situated in the border area of modern Nepal. His persona 1 name was Siddhartha, and his clan name Gautama, Sanskrit, Gautama. In his 29th year he renounced the splendor of his princely life and his royal career, and became a homeless ascetic in order to find a way out of what he had early recognized as a world of suffering. After a 6 years quest, spent under various religious teachers and in a period of fruitless self-mortification, he finally attained to perfect enlightenment, Sammasambodhi, under the Bodhi tree at Gaya today, Bodh-Gaya. 5 and 40 years of tireless preaching and teaching followed, and at last, in his 80th year, there passed away at Kusinara, that undiluted being that appeared for the blessing and happiness of the world. The Buddha is neither a god nor a prophet or incarnation of a god, but a supreme human being who, through his own effort, attained to final deliverance and perfect wisdom, and became the peerless teacher of gods and men. He is a savior only in the sense that he shows men how to save themselves, by actually following to the end the path trodden and shown by him. In the consummate harmony of wisdom and compassion attained by the Buddha, he embodies the universal and timeless ideal of man perfected. The Dhamma is the teaching of deliverance, in its entirety, as discovered, realized, and proclaimed by the Buddha. It has been handed down in the ancient Pali language, and preserved in 3 great collections of hooks, called T-Pi.Taka, the 3 baskets, namely, I, the Vinaya-Pi.Taka, or collection of discipline, containing the rules of the Min, order Futi the Sutta-Pi.Taka, or collection of discourses, consisting of various books of discourses, dialogues, verses, stories, etc., and dealings with the doctrine proper, as summarized in the 4 Noble Truths, the Abhidhamma-Pi.Taka, or philosophical collection, presenting the teachings of the Sutta-Pi.Take, in strictly systematic and philosophical form, that the Dhamma is not a doctrine of revelation, but the teaching of enlightenment based on the clear comprehension of actuality. It is the teaching of the fourfold truth, dealing with the fundamental facts of life, and with liberation attainable through man's own effort towards purification and insight. The Dhamma offers a lofty, but realistic, system of ethics, a penetrative analysis of life, a profound philosophy, practical methods of mind training in brief, an all-comprehensive and perfect guidance on the path to deliverance, by answering the claims of both heart and reason, and by pointing out the liberating middle path that leads beyond all futile and destructive extremes in thought and conduct. The Dhamma has, and will always have, a timeless and universal appeal, wherever there are hearts and minds mature enough to appreciate its message. The Sangha, the assembly, or community, is the order of bhikkhus, or mendicant monks, founded by the Buddha and still existing in its original form in Burma, Siam, Ceylon, Cambodia, Laos, and Chittagong, Bengal. It is, together with the order of the Jain monks, the oldest monastic order in the world. Amongst the most famous disciples in the time of the Buddha were Sariputta, who, after the master himself, possessed the profoundest insight, the Dhamma; Moggallana, who had the greatest supernatural powers; Ananda, the devoted disciple and constant companion of the Buddha; Mahakassapa, the president of the council held at Rajagaha immediately after the Buddha's death; Anuruddha, of divine vision and master of right mindfulness; Rahula, the Buddha's own son. The Sangha provides the outer framework and the favorable conditions for all those who earnestly desire to devote their life entirely to the realization of the highest goal, of deliverance, unhindered by worldly distractions. Thus, the Sangha, too, is of universal and timeless significance wherever religious development reaches maturity. The Threefold Refuge, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, are called the 3 jewels, Tiratana, on account of their matchless purity, and as being to the Buddhist the most precious objects in the world. These 3 jewels form also the Threefold Refuge T-Sera.Na of the Buddhist, in the words by which he professes, or reaffirms, his acceptance of them as the guides of his life and thought. The Pali formula of refuge is still the same as in the Buddha's time. Buddha.msara.na.mgacchame.dhamma.msara na.m gakomisanya msara.na.mgachaami. Go for refuge to the Buddhai, go for refuge to the Dhammai, go for refuge to the Sangjat. It is through the simple act of reciting this formula 3 times that one declares oneself a Buddhist. At the second and third repetition, the word dutiyompi or tatiyompi for the second, third time are added before each sentence. The 5 precepts after the formula of the threefold refuge follows usually the acceptance of the 5 moral precepts, pa and chasila. Their observance is the minimum standard needed to form the basis of a decent life and of further progress towards deliverance. Paanaatipata, Feramani Padam, Sama-adhyami. I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from killing living beings. Adinadana, Feramani Sihapada, Sama-adhyami. I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from taking things not given. Miskakara Beramani Sihapada, Sama-adhyami. I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct. Musaf Ferama.nisika apada, Sama-adhyami. Undertake to observe the precept to abstain from false speech. Surama Maja Pama-ada Tithana Feramani Isika apada, Sama-adhyami. I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from intoxicating drinks and drugs, causing heedlessness. The 4 noble truths, thus has it been said by the Buddha, the Enlightened One. D.16. It is through not understanding, not realizing for things, that I, disciples, as well as you, had to wander so long through this round of rebirths. And what are these 4 things? They are the noble truth of suffering dukkha, the noble truth of the origin of suffering dukkha samudaya, the noble truth of the extinction of suffering dukkha nirada, the noble truth of the path that leads to the extinction of suffering, dukkha nirodhaga aminipa, tipada eslofi, 11. As long as the absolutely true knowledge and insight as regards these 4 noble truths was not quite clear in me, so long was I not sure that I had won that supreme enlightenment which is unsurpassed in all the world with its heavenly beings, evil spirits and gods, amongst all the hosts of ascetics and priests, heavenly beings and men. But as soon as the absolute true knowledge and insight as regards these 4 noble truths had become perfectly clear in me, there arose in me the assurance that I had won that supreme enlightenment unsurpassed. M.26, and I discovered that profound truth, so difficult to perceive, difficult to understand, tranquilizing and sublime, which is not to be gained by mere reasoning and is visible only to the wise. The world, however, is given to pleasure, delighted with pleasure, enchanted with pleasure. Truly, such beings will hardly understand the law of conditionality, the dependent origination, opening parenthesis, pa.tkeca-sam up, paada of everything. Incomprehensible to them will also be the end of all formations, the forsaking of every substratum of rebirth, the fading away of craving, detachment, extinction, nibbana. Yet there are beings whose eyes are only a little covered with dust. They will understand the truth. The noble truth of suffering. D.2 To what now is the noble truth of suffering? Birth is suffering, decay is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Not to get what one desires is suffering. In short, the 5 groups of existence are suffering. What, now, is birth? The birth of beings belonging to this or that order of beings, their being born, their conception and springing into existence, the manifestation of the groups of existence, the arising of sense activity. This is called birth. And what is decay? The decay of beings belonging to this or that order of beings, their becoming aged, frail, grey, and wrinkled, the failing of their vital force, the wearing out of the senses. This is called decay. And what is death? The departing and vanishing of beings out of this or that order of beings, their destruction, disappearance, death, the completion of their life period, dissolution of the groups of existence, the discarding of the body. This is called death. And what is sorrow? The sorrow arising through this or that loss or misfortune, which one encounters, the worrying oneself, the state of being alarmed, inward sorrow, inward woe. This is called sorrow. And what is lamentation? Whatsoever through this or that loss or misfortune which befalls one, is wail and lament, wailing and lamenting, the state of woe and lamentation. This is called lamentation. And what is pain? The bodily pain and unpleasantness, the painful and unpleasant feeling produced by bodily impression. This is called pain. And what is grief? The mental pain and unpleasantness, the painful and unpleasant feeling produced by mental impression. This is called grief. And what is despair? Distress and despair arising through this or that loss or misfortune which one encounters, distressfulness and desperation. This is called despair. And what is the suffering of not getting what one desires? Two beings subject to birth. There comes the desire, oh, that we were not subject to birth. Oh, that no new birth was before us. Subject to decay, disease, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. The desire comes to them, oh, that we were not subject to these things. Oh, that these things were not before us. But this cannot be got by mere desiring. And not to get what one desires is suffering. The 5 Khandhas, or groups of existence. And what, in brief, are the 5 groups of existence? They are corporeality, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. M.109 All corporeal phenomena, whether past, present or future, one's own or external, gross or subtle, lofty or low, far or near, all belong to the group of corporeality. All feelings belong to the group of feeling. All perceptions belong to the group of perception. All mental formations belong to the group of formations. All consciousness belongs to the group of consciousness. These groups are a 5-fold classification, in which the Buddha has summed up all the physical and mental phenomena of existence, and in particular, those which appear to the ignorant man as his ego or personality. Hence birth, decay, death, ityasa, are also included in these 5 groups, which actually comprise the whole world. The group of corporeality, Rupakanda, M28. What now is the group of corporeality? It is the 4 primary elements, and corporeality, derived from them. The 4 elements. What are the 4 primary elements? They are the solid element, the fluid element, the heating element, the vibrating windy element. The 4 elements, Dhatu, or Mahabhut, popularly called earth, water, fire and wind, are to be understood as the elementary qualities of matter. They are named in Pali, Pa, Tavidhatu, Upodhatu, Tejodhatu, Fa'ayodhatu, and may be rendered as inertia, cohesion, radiation, and vibration. All 4 are present in every material object, though in varying degrees of strength. If, for example, the earth element predominates, the material object is called solid, etc. The corporeality derived from the 4 primary elements, Upadaya Rupa, or Upadaya Rupa, consists, according to the Abhidhamma, of the following 24 material phenomena and qualities: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, visible form, sound, odor, taste, masculinity, femininity, vitality, physical basis of mind, hadi, CB, dict, gesture, speech, space cavities of ear, nose, etc., decay, change, and nutriment, bodily impressions, opening, parenthesis, Abba. The tactile are not especially mentioned among these 24, as they are identical with the solid, the heating and the vibrating elements, which are cognizable through the sensations of pressure, cold, heat, pain, etc. 1. What, now, is the solid element? Patafida. The solid element may be one's own, or it may be external. And what is one's own solid element? Whatever in one's own person or body there exists of karmically acquired hardness, firmness, such as the hairs of head and body, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, stomach, bowels, mesentery, excrement, and so on. This is called one's own solid element. Now, whether it be one's own solid element, or whether it be the external solid element, they are both merely the solid element, and one should understand, according to reality and true wisdom, this does not belong to me, this am I not, this is not my ego. 2. What, now, is the fluid element? The fluid element may be one's own, or it may be external. And what is one's own fluid element? Whatever in one's own person or body there exists of karmically acquired liquidity or fluidity, such as bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, ischingrazy, saliva, nasal mucus oil of the joints, urine, and so on, this is called one's own fluid element. Now, whether it be one's own fluid element, or whether it be the external fluid element, they are both merely the fluid element, and one should understand, according to reality and true wisdom, this does not belong to me, this am I not, this is not my ego. 3. What, now, is the heating element? T.2. The heating element may be one's own, or it may be external. And what is one's own heating element? Whatever in one's own person or body there exists of karmically acquired heat or hotness, such as that whereby one is heated, consumed, scorched, whereby that which has been eaten, drunk, chewed, or tasted, is fully digested, and so on, this is called one's own heating element. Now, whether it be one's own heating element, or whether it be the external heating element, they are both merely the heating element, and one should understand, according to reality and true wisdom, this does not belong to me, this am I not, this is not my ego. For what now is the vibrating windy element? 5.2. The vibrating element may be one's own, or it may be external. And what is one's own vibrating element? What in one's own person or body there exists of karmically acquired wind or windiness, such as the upward going and downward going winds, the winds of stomach and intestines, the wind permeating all the limbs, in-breathing and out-breathing, and so on, this is called one's own vibrating element. Now, whether it be one's own vibrating element, or whether it be the external vibrating element, they are both merely the vibrating element, and one should understand, according to reality and true wisdom, this does not belong to me, this am I, not, this is not my ego. Just as one calls hut the circumscribed space which comes to be by means of wood and rushes, reeds, and clay, even so we call body the circumscribed space that comes to be by means of bones and sinews, flesh and skin. The group of feeling Khandha SC. 1. There are 3 kinds of feeling: pleasant, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant, indifferent. The group of perception SAN tilde Nakonda S22 56. What, now, is perception? There are 6 classes of perception: perception of forms, sounds, odors, tastes, bodily impressions, and of mental objects. The group of mental formations, Sankharakonda. What now are mental formations? There are 6 classes of volitions. Cetana will directed 2 forms: Rupacetana, 2 sounds, odors, tastes, bodily impressions, and 2 mental objects. The group of mental formations, Sankharakonda, is a collective term for numerous functions, or aspects of mental activity which, in addition to feeling and perception, are present in a single moment of consciousness. In the Abhidharma, 50 mental formations are distinguished, 7 of which are constant factors of mind. The number and composition of the rest varies according to the character of the respective class of consciousness. See table in B-Dict. In the Discourse on Right Understanding M9, 3 main representatives of the group of mental formations are mentioned: volition, Cetana sense, impression phasa, and attention manasa. Of these again, it is volition which, being a principal formative factor, is particularly characteristic of the group of formations, and therefore serves to exemplify it in the passage given above. For other applications of the term CB diet. The group of consciousness vi N tilde NAA. Nakonda S22 56. What, now, is consciousness? There are 6 classes of consciousness: consciousness of forms, sounds, odors, tastes, bodily impressions, and of mental objects lit, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, etc. Dependent origination of consciousness Sem. 2.8. Now, though one's eye be intact, yet if the external forms do not fall within the field of vision, and no corresponding conjunction of eye and forms takes place, in that case there occurs no formation of the corresponding aspect of consciousness. Or, though one's eye be intact, and the external forms fall within the field of vision, yet if no corresponding conjunction takes place, in that case also there occurs no formation of the corresponding aspect of consciousness. If, however, one's eye is intact, and the external forms fall within the field of vision, and the corresponding conjunction takes place, in that case there arises the corresponding aspect of consciousness, M38. Hence I say, the arising of consciousness is dependent upon conditions, and without these conditions, no consciousness arises, and upon whatsoever conditions the arising of consciousness is dependent. After these it is called consciousness, whose arising depends on the I and forms, is called I consciousness kakuvai, N_NAA.NA, closing parenthesis consciousness, whose arising depends on the ear and sounds, is called ear consciousness, sotavai NNAA.NA, closing parenthesis consciousness, whose arising depends on the olfactory organ and odors, is called nose consciousness gonavai N_NAA.NA, closing parenthesis consciousness, whose arising depends on the tongue and taste, is called tongue consciousness jivavi N_NAA.NA, closing parenthesis consciousness, whose arising depends on the body and bodily contacts, is called body consciousness kayavi N_NAA.NA, closing parenthesis consciousness, whose arising depends on the mind and mind objects, is called mind consciousness monavi N_NAA.NA, closing parenthesis M28. Whatsoever there is of corporeality rupa on that occasion, this belongs to the group of corporeality. Whatsoever there is of feeling vedana, this belongs to the group of feeling. Whatsoever there is of perception, na, this belongs to the group of perception. Whatsoever there are of mental formations, sankhara, these belong to the group of mental formations. Whatsoever there is of consciousness vi, N_NAA.NA, this belongs to the group of consciousness. Dependency of consciousness on the four other Khandhas, 22, 5.3, and it is impossible that anyone can explain the passing out of one existence and the entering into a new existence, or the growth, increase, and development of consciousness independently of corporeality, feeling, perception, and mental formations. The three characteristics of existence T-lack, KHA.na AIIII, 130 for all. Formations are transient anicca. All formations are subject to suffering dukkha. All things are without a self, anatta S 22, 5.9. Corporeality is transient. Feeling is transient. Perception is transient. Mental formations are transient. Consciousness is transient. And that which is transient is subject to suffering. And of that which is transient and subject to suffering and change, one cannot rightly say, this belongs to me, this am I, this is myself. Therefore, whatever there be of corporeality, of feeling, perception, mental formations, or consciousness, whether past, present or future, one's own or external, gross or subtle, lofty or low, far or near, one should understand according to reality and true wisdom, this does not belong to me. This am I not. This is not myself. The anatta doctrine, individual existence, as well as the whole world, are, in reality, nothing but a process of ever-changing phenomena which are all comprised in the five groups of existence. This process has gone on from time immemorial, before one's birth, and also after one's death. It will continue for endless periods of time, as long and as far as there are conditions for it. As stated in the preceding texts, the five groups of existency that taken separately or combined in no way constitute a real ego entity or subsisting personality, and equally no self, soul or substance can be found outside of these groups as their owner. In other words, the five groups of existence are not self-anatta, nor do they belong to a self-anatanya. In view of the impermanence and conditionality of all existence, the belief in any form of self must be regarded as an illusion, just as what we designate by the name of chariot has no existence apart from axle, wheels, shaft, body, and so forth, or, as the word house, is merely a convenient designation for various materials put together after a certain fashion so as to enclose a portion of space. And there is no separate house entity in existence. In exactly the same way, that which we call a being or an individual or a person, or by the name I, is nothing but a changing combination of physical and psychical phenomena, and has no real existence in itself. This is, in brief, the anatta doctrine of the Buddha, the teaching that all existence is void, na, of a permanent self or substance. It is the fundamental Buddhist doctrine not found in any other religious teaching or philosophical system. To grasp it fully, not only in an abstract and intellectual way, but by constant reference to actual experience, is an indispensable condition for the true understanding of the Buddha Dharma and for the realization of its goal. The Anicca doctrine is the necessary outcome of the thorough analysis of actuality undertaken, for example, in the Khandha doctrine, of which only a bare indication can be given by means of the texts included here. For a detailed survey of the Khandhas, see B. Dict. S. 2295. Suppose a man who was not blind beheld the many bubbles on the Ganges as they drove along, and he watched them and carefully examined them. Then after he had carefully examined them, they would appear to him empty, unreal, and unsubstantial. In exactly the same way does the monk behold all the corporeal phenomena, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and states of consciousness, whether they be of the past, or the present, or the future, far or near, and he watches them and examines them carefully. And, after carefully examining them, they appear to him empty, void, and without a self. S. 22:29. Whoso delights in corporeality, or feeling, or perception, or mental formations, or consciousness, he delights in suffering. And whoso delights in suffering will not be freed from suffering. Thus I say, DHP 14648. How can you find delight and mirth where there is burning without end? In deepest darkness you are wrapped. Why do you not seek for the light? I.ook at this puppet here, well rigged, a heap of many sores, piled up, diseased, and full of greediness, unstable, and impermanent, devoured by old age, is this frame, a prey to sickness, weak and frail. 2 pieces breaks this putrid body. All life must truly end in death. The 3 warnings A3:35. Did you never see in the world a man, or a woman, 80, 90, or 100 years old, frail, crooked as a gable roof, bent down, resting on crutches, with tottering steps, infirm, youth long since fled, with broken teeth, grey and scanty hair, or none, wrinkled, with blotched limbs? And did the thought never come to you that you also are subject to decay, that you also cannot escape it? Did you never see in the world a man or a woman who, being sick, afflicted, and grievously ill, wallowing in his own filth, was lifted up by some and put to bed by others? And did the thought never come to you that you also are subject to disease, that you also cannot escape it? Did you never see in the world the corpse of a man or a woman, 1 or 2 or 3 days after death, swollen up, blue-black in color, and full of corruption? And did the thought never come to you that you also are subject to death, that you also cannot escape it? Samsaras 15:3. Inconceivable is the beginning of this essay. MSA Ara. Not to be discovered as any first beginning of beings, who obstructed by ignorance and ensnared by craving, are hurrying and hastening through this round of rebirths. SA.MSA. Arath, the wheel of existence. Lit. The perpetual wandering is the name given in the Pali scriptures to the sea of life, ever restlessly heaving, up and down, the symbol of this continuous process of ever, again and again being born, growing old, suffering, and dying. More precisely put, SA.MSA Ara is the unbroken sequence of the 5-fold Khandha combinations, which, constantly changing from moment to moment, follow continually one upon the other through inconceivable periods of time. Of this SA.MSA era, a single lifetime constitutes only a tiny fraction. Hence, to be able to comprehend the first noble truth, one must let one's gaze rest upon the SA.MSA Ara, upon this frightful sequence of rebirths, and not merely upon one single lifetime, which of course may sometimes be not very painful. The term suffering dukkha in the first noble truth refers therefore not merely to painful bodily and mental sensations due to unpleasant impressions, but it comprises in addition everything productive of suffering or liable to it. The truth of suffering teaches that, owing to the universal law of impermanence, even high and sublime states of happiness are subject to change and destruction, and that all states of existence are therefore unsatisfactory, without exception, carrying in themselves the seeds of suffering. Which do you think is more, the flood of tears, which weeping and wailing you have shed upon this long way hurrying and hastening through this round of rebirths, united with the undesired, separated from the desired this, or the waters of the 4 oceans? Long have you suffered the death of father and mother, of sons, daughters, brothers, and sisters, and whilst you were thus suffering, You have indeed shed more tears upon this long way than there is water in the four oceans. SXV 13, which do you think is more? The streams of blood that, through your being beheaded, have flowed upon this long way. These, or the waters of the four oceans. Long have you been caught as robbers, or highwaymen, or and, through your being beheaded, verily more blood has flowed upon this long way than there is water in the four oceans. But how is this possible? Inconceivable is the beginning of this SA.MSA. Not to be discovered is any first beginning of beings who, obstructed by ignorance and ensnared by craving, are hurrying and hastening through this round of rebirths. S. 15:1. And thus have you long undergone suffering, undergone torment, undergone misfortune, and filled the graveyards full. Truly, long enough to be dissatisfied with all the forms of existence, long enough to turn away and free yourselves from them all. 2. The noble truth of the origin of suffering. D2. To what, now, is the noble truth of the origin of suffering? It is craving, which gives rise to fresh rebirth, and, bound up with pleasure and lust, now here, now there, finds ever fresh delight. The threefold craving there is the sensual craving KAA.AA.NHAA, the craving for eternal existence BHAVA-TA.NHAA, the craving for self-annihilation Nya, sensual craving Kamatanya, is the desire for the enjoyment of the five sense objects. Craving for existence BHAVA-TA.NHAA is the desire for continued or eternal life, referring in particular to life in those higher worlds called fine material and immaterial existences, Rupa and Arupa Bhava. It is closely connected with the so-called eternity belief, Bhava or SASATA-D.T.T, i.e. the belief in an absolute, eternal ego entity persisting independently of our body. Craving for self-annihilation lit. For non-existence, VIBHAVA-TA.NHAA is the outcome of the belief in annihilation, Vibhava, or UCCHE.D.T.T, i.e. the delusive materialistic notion of a more or less real ego which is annihilated at death, and which does not stand in any causal relation with the time before death and the time after death. Origin of craving. But where does this craving arise and take root? Wherever in the world there are delightful and pleasurable things, there this craving arises and takes root. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind are delightful and pleasurable. There this craving arises and takes root. Visual objects, sounds, smells, tastes, bodily impressions, and mind objects are delightful and pleasurable. There this craving arises and takes root. Consciousness, sense impression, feeling born of sense impression, perception, will, craving, thinking, and reflecting are delightful and pleasurable. There this craving arises and takes root. This is called the noble truth of the origin of suffering, dependent origination of all phenomenon. 3.8. If, whenever perceiving a visual object, a sound, odor, taste, bodily impression, or a mind object, the object is pleasant, one is attracted, and if unpleasant, one is repelled. Thus, whatever kind of feeling Vedana one experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, or indifferent, if one approves of and cherishes the feeling and clings to it, then while doing so, lust springs up. But lust for feelings means clinging upadana, and on clinging depends the present process of becoming. On the process of becoming bhava, here kama bhava, karma process depends future birth yati, and dependent on birth are decay and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Thus arises this whole mass of suffering, the formula of the dependent, origination, opening parenthesis pa.tixca.samup, paada, of which only some of the 12 links have been mentioned in the preceding passage, may be regarded as a detailed explanation of the second. Truth. Present karma results. 13. Truly, due to sensuous craving, conditioned through sensuous craving, impelled by sensuous craving, entirely moved by sensuous craving, kings fight with kings, princes with princes, priests with priests, citizens with citizens, the mother quarrels with the son with the mother, the father with the son with the father, brother quarrels with brother, brother with sister, sister with brother, friend with friend. Thus, given to dissension, quarreling, and Fighting, they fall upon one another with fists, sticks, or weapons, and thereby they suffer death or deadly pain. And further, due to sensuous craving, conditioned through sensuous craving, impelled by sensuous craving, entirely moved by sensuous craving, people break into houses, rob, plunder, pillage whole houses, commit highway robbery, seduce the wives of others. Then, the rulers have such people caught and inflict on them various forms of punishment, and thereby they incur death or deadly pain. Now, this is the misery of sensuous craving, the heaping up of suffering in this present life, due to sensuous craving, conditioned through sensuous craving, caused by sensuous craving, entirely dependent on sensuous craving, future karma results. And further, people take the evil way in deeds, the evil way in words, the evil way in thoughts, and by taking the evil way in deeds, words and thoughts, at the dissolution of the body, after death, they fall into a downward state of existence, a state of suffering, into an unhappy destiny, and the abysses of the hells. But this is the misery of sensuous craving, the heaping up of suffering in the future life, due to sensuous craving, conditioned through sensuous craving, caused by sensuous craving, entirely dependent on sensuous craving. DHP 127. Not in the air, nor ocean midst, nor hidden in the mountain clefts. Nowhere is found a place on earth where man is freed from evil deeds. Karma, as volition. A. Vi 63. It is volition, Sitana, that I call karma action. Having willed, one acts by body, speech, and mind. There are actions karma ripening in hells, ripening in the animal kingdom, ripening in the domain of ghosts, ripening amongst men, ripening in heavenly worlds. The result of actions, Vipika, is of three kinds: ripening in the present life, in the next life, or in future lives. Inheritance of deeds karma, AX 206. All beings are the owners of their deeds. Karma, Skur, karma, the heirs of their deeds. Their deeds are the womb from which they sprang. With their deeds they are bound up. Their deeds are their refuge. Whatever deeds they do, good or evil, love such, they will be the heirs. A 333. And wherever the beings spring into existence, there their deeds will ripen. And wherever their deeds ripen, there they will earn the fruits of those deeds, be it in this life, or be it in the next life, or be it in any other future life. S. 2299. There will come a time when the mighty ocean will dry up, vanish, and be no more. There will come a time when the mighty earth will be devoured by fire, perish, and be no more. But yet there will be no end to the suffering of beings who, obstructed by ignorance and ensnared by craving, are hurrying and hastening through this round of rebirths. Craving opening parenthesis TA.NHAA, however, is not the only cause of evil action, and thus of all the suffering and misery produced thereby in this and the next life. But wherever there is craving, there, dependent on craving, may arise envy, anger, hatred, and many other evil things productive of suffering and misery. And all these selfish, life-affirming impulses and actions, together with the various kinds of misery produced thereby here or thereafter, and even all the 5 groups of phenomena constituting life, everything is ultimately rooted in blindness and ignorance, avijja karmau. The second noble truth serves also to explain the causes of the seeming injustices in nature, by teaching that nothing in the world can come into existence without reason or cause, and that not only our latent tendencies, but our whole destiny, all will and woe, result from causes karma, which we have to seek partly in this life, partly in former states of existence. These causes are the life-affirming activities, karma skr, karma, produced by body, speech, and mind. Hence it is this threefold action karma that determines the character and destiny of all beings. Exactly defined, karma denotes those good and evil volitions, kusala chatana, together with rebirth. Thus existence, or better the process of becoming bhava, consists of an active and conditioning karma process, kamabhava, and of its result, the rebirth process, upapati bhava here. 2. When considering karma, one must not lose sight of the impersonal nature, anattata, of existence. In the case of a storm-swept sea, it is not an identical wave that hits over the surface of the ocean, but it is the rising and falling of quite different masses of water. In the same way, it should be understood that there are no real ego entities hastening through the ocean of rebirth, but merely life waves, which, according to their nature and activities, good or evil, manifest themselves here as men, there as animals, and elsewhere as invisible beings. Once more, the fact may be emphasized here that, correctly speaking, the term karma signifies only the aforementioned kinds of action themselves, and does not mean or include their results. For further details about karma, see Fund and B. Dict. 3. The noble truth of the extinction of suffering. D.2 To what, now, is the noble truth of the extinction of suffering? It is the complete fading away and extinction of this craving, its forsaking and abandonment, liberation and detachment from it. But where may this craving vanish? Where may it be extinguished? Wherever in the world there are delightful and pleasurable things, there this craving may vanish, there it may be extinguished. SG 66b. It in the past, present, or future. Whosoever of the monks or priests regards the delightful and pleasurable things in the world as impermanent anicca, miserable dukkha, and without a self anatta, as diseases and cankers, it is he who overcomes craving, dependent extinction of all phenomena. 12. 4.3 And through the total fading away and extinction of craving opening, (ta.nhaa), clinging upadana is extinguished. Through the extinction of clinging, the process of becoming bhava is extinguished. Through the extinction of the karmic process of becoming, rebirth yati is extinguished. And through the extinction of rebirth, decay and death, sorrow, lamentation, suffering, grief and despair are extinguished. Thus comes about the extinction of this whole mass of suffering. S22:30 Hence the annihilation, cessation and overcoming of corporeality, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. This is the extinction of suffering, the end of disease, the overcoming of old age and death, the undulatory motion which we call a wave and which, in the ignorant spectator, creates the illusion of one and the same mass of water moving over the surface of the lake, is produced and fed by the wind, and maintained by the stored up energies. Now, after the wind has ceased, and if no fresh wind again whips up the water of the lake, the stored up energies will gradually be consumed, and thus the whole undulatory motion will come to an end. Similarly, if fire does not get new fuel, it will, after consuming all the old fuel, become extinct. Just in the same way, this five khandha process, which, in the ignorant worldling, creates the illusion of an ego entity, is produced and fed by the life-affirming craving opening (ta.nhaa) and maintained for some time by means of the stored-up life energies. Now, after the fuel, upadana, i.e. the craving and clinging to life, has ceased, and if no new craving impels again this five khandha process, life will continue as long as there are still life energies stored up. But at their destruction, at death, the five khandha process will reach final extinction. Thus nibbana, or extinction Sanskrit, nirvana, from near plus root va to cease blowing, become extinct may be considered under two aspects, namely, as 1. Extinction of impurities, kilisaparinibana, reached at the attainment of arahatship, or holiness, which generally takes place during lifetime. In the suttas, it is called sopadizis nibbana, i.e. nibbana, with the groups of existence still remaining. 2. Extinction of the five khandha process, khandha prinibbana, which takes place at the death of the arahat, called in the suttas and up aad is esa-nib, baanaie, nibbana, without the groups remaining. (nibbaanaa.iii). 3. To this, truly, is peace. This is the highest, namely the end of all karma formations, the forsaking of every substratum of rebirth, the fading away of craving, detachment, extinction. Nibbana A355, enraptured with lust, enraged with anger, blinded by delusion, overwhelmed, with mind ensnared, man aims at his own ruin, at the ruin of others, at the ruin of both, and he experiences mental pain and grief. But, if lust, anger, and delusion are given up, man aims neither at his own ruin, nor at the ruin of others, nor at the ruin of both, and he experiences no mental pain and grief. Thus is nibbana immediate, visible in this life, inviting, attractive, and comprehensible to the wise. S.xxxvii.1 The extinction of greed, the extinction of hate, the extinction of delusion. This, indeed, is called nibbana, the arahat, or holy. 1 Avi 55 And for a disciple thus freed, in whose heart dwells peace, There is nothing to be added to what has been done, and naught more remains for him to do. Just as a rock of one solid mass remains unshaken by the wind, even so neither forms, nor sounds, nor odors, nor tastes, nor contacts of any kind, neither the desired nor the undesired, can cause such a one to waver. Steadfast is his mind, gained his deliverance. SNP 1048. And he who has considered all the contrasts on this earth, and is no more disturbed by anything whatever in the world, the peaceful one, freed from rage, from sorrow, and from longing, he has passed beyond birth and decay. That immutably at 8:1 truly, there is a realm where there is neither the solid nor the fluid, neither heat nor motion, neither this world nor any other world, neither sun nor moon. This I call neither arising nor passing away, neither standing still, nor being born, nor dying. There is neither foothold, nor development, nor any basis. This is the end of suffering. Uday 8:3. There is an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed. If there were not this unborn, this unoriginated, this uncreated, this unformed, escape from the world of the born, the originated, the created, the formed, would not be possible. But since there is an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed, therefore is escape possible from the world of the born, the originated, the created, the formed. 4. The noble truth of the path that leads to the extinction of suffering, the two extremes, and the middle path is 56:11. To give oneself up to indulgence in sensual pleasure, the base, common, vulgar, unholy, unprofitable, or to give oneself up to self-mortification, the painful, unholy, unprofitable, both these two extremes, the perfect one has avoided and has found out the middle path, which makes one both to see and to know, which leads to peace, to discernment, to enlightenment, to nibbana. The eightfold path, it is the noble eightfold path, the way that leads to the extinction of suffering, namely, 1. Right understanding Sam, MAA-D.T.TIII, Wisdom Pa, N tilde, NAA 2. Right thought Sam, MAA-San Kappa 3. Right speech Samavakai, Morality, SII, Ale 4. Right action, Samakam, Manta 5. Right livelihood, Sam, MAA-AAJIVA 6. Right efforts, concentration Sam, AADHI 7. Right mindfulnessimus, ATI 8. Right concentration Sam Samad. This is the middle path, which the perfect one has found out, which makes one both see and know, which leads to peace, to discernment, to enlightenment, to nib, BAANA. The noble eightfold path, ARIYA-A.T. Then GIKAMAGGA. Closing parenthesis. The figurative expression, path or way, has been sometimes misunderstood as implying that the single factors of that path have to be taken up for practice, one after the other, in the order given. In that case, right understanding, i.e. the full penetration of truth, would have to be realized first, before one could think of developing right thought, or of practicing right speech, etc. But in reality, the three factors, 3 to 5, forming the section, morality, sila, have to be perfected first. After that, one has to give attention to the systematic training of mind by practicing the three factors 6 to 8, forming the section concentrations, samadhi. Only after that preparation, man's character and mind will be capable of reaching perfection. In the first two factors 1 to 2, forming the section of wisdom P N tilde, NAA, closing parenthesis. An initial minimum of right understanding, however, is required at the very start, because some grasp of the facts of suffering, etc., is necessary to provide convincing reasons and an incentive for a diligent practice of the path. A measure of right understanding is also required for helping the other path factors to fulfill intelligently and efficiently their individual functions in the common task of liberation. For that reason, and to emphasize the importance of that factor, right understanding has been given the first place in the Noble Eightfold Path. This initial understanding of the Dhamma, however, has to be gradually developed with the help of the other path factors until it reaches, finally, that highest clarity of insight, vipassana, which is the immediate condition for entering the 4 stages of holiness, see the Noble Ones, and for attaining nib, BAANA. Right understanding is therefore the beginning, as well as the culmination of the Noble Eightfold Path. M139. Free from pain and torture is this path. Free from groaning and suffering, it is the perfect path. DHP 274-75. Truly, like this path there is no other path to the purity of insight. If you follow this path, you will put an end to suffering. DHP 276. But each one has to struggle for himself. The perfect ones have only pointed out the way. M.26. Give ear then, for the deathless is found. I reveal, I set forth the truth, as I reveal it to you, so act. And that supreme goal of the holy life, for the sake of which sons of good families rightly go forth from home to the homeless state, this you will, in no long time, in this very life, make known to yourself, realize, and make your own. Right understanding. Sam MAA-D.T.T, closing parenthesis D.2. For what, now, is right understanding? Understanding the four truths. 1. To understand suffering. 2. To understand the origin of suffering. 3. To understand the extinction of suffering. 4. To understand the path that leads to the extinction of suffering. This is called right understanding. Understanding merit and demerit. 9. Again, when the noble disciple understands what is karmically wholesome, and the root of wholesome karma, what is karmically unwholesome, and the root of unwholesome karma, then he has right understanding. What now is karmically Akusala 1. Destruction of living beings is karmically unwholesome bodily action. Kayakama 2. Stealing is karmically unwholesome. 3. Unlawful sexual intercourse is karmically unwholesome. 4. Lying is karmically unwholesome. Verbal action, VACII-KAMM, closing parenthesis 5. Tailbearing, is karmically unwholesome. 6. Harsh language, is karmically unwholesome. 7. Frivolous talk is karmically unwholesome. 8. Covetous is karmically unwholesome. Mental action monokama. 9. Ill will is karmically unwholesome. 10. Wrong views are karmically unwholesome. These 10 are called evil courses of action, akusalokamapatha. And what are the roots of unwholesome karma? Greed lobha is a root of unwholesome karma. Hatred dosa is a root of unwholesome karma. Delusion moha is a root of unwholesome karma. Therefore, I say, these demeritorious actions are of three kinds, either due to greed, or due to hatred, or due to delusion that's karmically unwholesome. Akasala is considered every volitional act of body, speech, or mind, which is rooted in greed, hatred, or delusion. It is regarded as akusala, i.e. unwholesome or unskillful, as it produces evil and painful results in this or some future existence. The state of will or volition is really that which counts as action kama. It may manifest itself as action of the body or speech. If it does not manifest itself outwardly, it is counted as mental action. The state of greed labha, as also that of hatred dosa, is always accompanied by ignorance or delusion. Moha, this latter being the primary root of all evil. Greed and hatred, however, cannot coexist in one and the same moment of consciousness. What, now, is karmically wholesome kasala? 1. To abstain from killing is karmically wholesome bodily action kaya karma. 2. To abstain from stealing is karmically wholesome. 3. 2. Abstain from unlawful sexual intercourse is karmically wholesome. 4. To abstain from lying is karmically wholesome verbal action. Vachakama 5. 2. Abstain from talebearing is karmically wholesome. 6.2. Abstain from harsh language is karmically wholesome. 7. To abstain from frivolous talk is karmically wholesome. 8. Absence of covetousness is karmically wholesome mental action. Opening parenthesis, mono-kamma, closing parenthesis. 9. Absence of ill will is karmically wholesome. 10. Right understanding is karmically wholesome. These 10 are called good courses of action, kusala-kamma-patha, closing parenthesis. End. What are the roots of wholesome karma? Absence of greed, alobha equals unselfishness, is a root of wholesome karma. Absence of hatred, adosa equals kindness, is a root of wholesome karma. Absence of delusion, amoha equals wisdom, is a root of wholesome karma. Understanding the three characteristics T-lack, KHA.NASS, 2251 again. When one understands that corporeality, feeling, perception, mental formations and consciousness are transient, subject to suffering, and without a self. Also, in that case, one possesses right understanding. Unprofitable questions. 63. Should anyone say that he does not wish to lead the holy life under the Blessed One, unless the Blessed One first tells him whether the world is eternal or temporal, finite or infinite, whether the life principle is identical with the body, or something different, whether the Perfect One continues after death, etc. Such a one would die ere the Perfect One could tell him all this. It is as if a man were pierced by a poisoned arrow and his friends, companions or near relations should send for a surgeon, but that man should say, "I will not have this arrow pulled out until I know who the man is that has wounded me, whether he is a nobleman, a priest, a tradesman, or a servant, or what his name is, and to what family he belongs, or whether he is tall or short, or of medium height." Truly, such a man would die ere he could adequately learn all this. SNP 592. Therefore, the man who seeks his own welfare should pull out this arrow of lamentation, pain, and sorrow. M63-4. Whether the theory exists, or whether it does not exist, that the world is eternal, or temporal, or finite, or infinite, yet certainly there exists birth, there exists decay, there exists death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, the extinction of which, attainable even in this present life, I make known unto you. 5 fetters, say Moyana. M64. Suppose, for instance, that there is an unlearned worldling, void of regard for holy men, ignorant of the teaching of holy men, untrained in the noble doctrine, and his heart is possessed and overcome by self-illusion, by skepticism, by attachment to mere rule and ritual, by sensual lust, and by ill will. And how to free himself from these things, he does not in reality know self-illusion. Sakahayadite Thi may reveal itself as 1. Eternalism, Bhava, or Sasata-D.T.T. Lit. Eternity belief, i.e., the belief that one's ego, self, or soul exists independently of the material body, and continues even after the dissolution of the latter. 2. Annihilationism, Vibhava, or U-C-C-H-C-D-T.T. Lit. Annihilation belief, i.e. the materialistic belief that this present life constitutes the ego, and hence that it is annihilated at the death of the material body. For the 10 fetters, Samoyana see the 10 fetters, unwise consideration, to not knowing what is worthy of consideration and what is unworthy of consideration. He considers the unworthy and not the worthy, and unwisely he considers thus: have I been in the past? Or have I not been in the past? What have I been in the past? How have I been in the past? From what state into what state did I change in the past? Shall I be in the future? Or shall I not be in the future? What shall I be in the future? How shall I be in the future? From what state into what state shall I change in the future? And the present also fills him with doubt. Am I, or am I not? What am I? This being, whence has it come? Whither will it go? The 6 views about the self-hand. With such unwise considerations, he adopts one or other of the 6 views, and it becomes his conviction and firm belief. I have a self, or I have no self, or with the self I perceive the self, or with that which is no self I perceive the self, or with the self I perceive that which is no self. Or he adopts the following view: this myself, which can think and feel, and which now here, now there, experiences the fruit of good and evil deeds. This myself is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, and will thus eternally remain the same. M22. If there really existed the self, there would also exist something which belonged to the self. As, however, in truth and reality, neither the self nor anything belonging to the self can be found. Is it not therefore really an utter fool's doctrine to say, this is the world, this am I, after death I shall be permanent, persisting, and eternal? M2. These are called mere views, a thicket of views, a puppet show of views, a toil of views, a snare of views, and ensnared in the fetter of views, the ignorant worldling will not be freed from rebirth, from decay, and from death, from sorrow, pain, grief, and despair. He will not be freed, I say, from suffering. Wise considerations. The learned and noble disciple, however, who has regard for holy men, knows the teaching of holy men, is well trained in the noble doctrine. He understands what is worthy of consideration and what is unworthy. And knowing this, he considers the worthy and not the unworthy. What suffering is, he wisely considers. What the origin of suffering is, he wisely considers. What the extinction of suffering is, he wisely considers. What the path is that leads to the extinction of suffering, he wisely considers. The Sotapanna, or stream ignorant, by thus considering, 3 fetters vanish, namely, self-illusion, skepticism, and attachment to mere rule and ritual. M22 But those disciples, in whom these 3 fetters have vanished, they all have entered the stream, Sotapanna, DHP, 178 more than any earthly power, more than all the joys of heaven, more than rule o'er all the world, is the entrance to the stream. The 10 fetters Samuyana, there are 10 fetters, Samoyana, by which beings are bound to the wheel of existence. They are self-illusion, opening parenthesis SAKKAAYA-D.T.T, skepticism Visakaka, attachment to mere rule and ritual, Silabot, sensuan lustka, Amaragajailwil Vyap, craving for fine material existence Ruparaga, craving for immaterial existence Aruparaga, conceit, manner restlessness, Udihaka, ignorance, opening parenthesis AVIJJA, a closing parenthesis dot, the noble ones, Areopagala, one who is freed from the first 3 fetters is called a stream enterer. In Pali Sotapanna, i.e. one who has entered the stream leading to Nibbana, he has unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and is incapable of breaking the 5 moral precepts. He will be reborn 7 times, at the utmost, and not in a state lower than the human world. One who has overcome the 4th and the 5th fetters in their grosser form is called a Sakadagami lit. One's returner, i.e. he will be reborn only once more in the sensuous sphere Kamaloka, and thereafter reach holiness. An Anagami, lit non-returner, is wholly freed from the first 5 fetters which bind one to rebirth in the sensuous sphere. After death, while living in the fine material sphere Rupaloka, he will reach the goal. An Arahat, i.e. the perfectly holy one, is freed from all the 10 fetters. Each of the aforementioned 4 stages of holiness consists of the pathmag and the fruition, for example, path of stream entry Sotapati Magga and fruition of stream entry Sot. Accordingly, there are 8 types, or 4 pairs, of noble individuals Areopagala. The path consists of the single moment of entering the respective attainment. By fruition are meant those moments of consciousness which follow immediately thereafter as the result of the path, and which under certain circumstances may repeat innumerable times during lifetime. For further details, see B. Dict, Aryapagala, Sotapanna, etc. Mundane and supermundane understanding M.117. Therefore, I say, right understanding is of 2 kinds. 1. The view that alms and offerings are not useless, that there is fruit and result, both of good and bad actions, that there are such things as this life and the next life, that father and mother, as also spontaneously born beings in the heavenly worlds, are no mere words, that there are in the world monks and priests who are spotless and perfect, who can explain this life and the next life, which they themselves have understood. This is called the mundane right understanding Lokya Samadhi, which yields worldly fruits and brings good results. 2. But whatsoever there is of wisdom, of penetration, of right understanding conjoined with the path of the Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, or Arahat, the mind being turned away from the world and conjoined with the path, the holy path being pursued, this is called the supermundane right understanding Lokotara Samadhi, which is not of the world, but is supermundane and conjoined with the path. Thus, there are 2 kinds of the Eightfold Path. 1. The mundane, Lokya, practiced by the worldling Puthajana, i.e. by all those who have not yet reached the first stage of holiness. 2. The supermundane Lokotara practiced by the noble ones, Aryapagala, conjoined with other steps. Now, in understanding wrong understanding is wrong, and right understanding is right, one practices right understanding, first factor, and in making efforts to overcome wrong understanding, and to arouse right understanding, one practices right effort, sixth factor, and in overcoming wrong understanding with attentive mind, and dwelling with attentive mind in the possession of right understanding, one practices right mindfulness, seventh factor. Hence, there are three things that accompany and follow upon right understanding, namely, right understanding, right effort, and right mindfulness, free from all theorism. 72. Now, if anyone should put the question, whether I admit any theory at all, he should be answered thus: the perfect one is free from any theory. For the perfect one has understood what corporeality is, and how it arises and passes away. He has understood what feeling is, and how it arises and passes away. He has understood what perception is, and how it arises and passes away. He has understood what the mental formations are, and how they arise and pass away. He has understood what consciousness is, and how it arises and passes away. Therefore I say, the perfect one has won complete deliverance through the extinction, fading away, disappearance, rejection, and getting rid of all opinions and conjectures, of all inclination to the vain glory of I and mine. The three characteristics say, 3:1-3-4, whether perfect ones Buddhas appear in the world, or whether perfect ones do not appear in the world, it still remains a firm condition, an immutable fact and fixed law, that all formations are impermanent anicca, that all formations are subject to suffering that everything is without a self anatta. In Pali, sab, sankhara, and sabizangara dukkha sab dhamma anatta. The word sankhara, formations, comprises here all things that are conditioned or formed, sankhat, i.e., all possible physical and mental constituents of existence. The word Dhamma, however, has a still wider application and is all-embracing, as it comprises also the so-called unconditioned, unformed asankhata, i.e. nibbana. For this reason, it would be wrong to say that all dharmas are impermanent and subject to change, for the nibbana dharma is permanent and free from change. And for the same reason, it is correct to say that not only all the sankharas equal sankhata dharma, but that all the dharmas, including the asankhata dharma, lack an ego, Anatas 22:9-4, a corporeal phenomenon, a feeling, a perception, a mental formation, a consciousness, which is permanent and persistent, eternal and not subject to change. Such a thing the wise men in this world do not recognize. And I also say that there is no such thing, AI 15. And it is impossible that a being possessed of right understanding should regard anything as the self. Views and discussions about the ego d. 15. Now, if someone should say that feeling is his self, he should be answered thus: there are three kinds of feeling: pleasurable, painful, and indifferent feeling. Which of these three feelings do you consider as yourself? Because, at the moment of experiencing one of these feelings, one does not experience the other two. These three kinds of feeling are impermanent, of dependent origin, are subject to decay and dissolution, to fading away and extinction. Whosoever, in experiencing one of these feelings, thinks that this is his self, must, after the extinction of that feeling, admit that his self has become dissolved, and thus he will consider his self already in this present life as impermanent, mixed up with pleasure and pain, subject to arising and passing away. If anyone should say that feeling is not his ego, and that his self is inaccessible to feeling, he should be asked thus: now, where there is no feeling, is it then possible to say, this am I? Or another might say, feeling, indeed, is not myself, but it also is untrue that myself is inaccessible to feeling, for it is myself that feels, myself that has the faculty of feeling. Such a one should be answered thus: suppose that feeling should become altogether totally extinguished. Now, if after the extinction of feeling, no feeling whatever exists there, is it then possible to say, this am I? M 148, to say that the mind, or the mind objects, or the mind consciousness, constitute the self. Such an assertion is unfounded, for an arising and a passing away is seen there, and seeing the arising and passing away of these things, one would come to the conclusion that one's self arises and passes away. S 12, 621t, would be better for the unlearned worldling to regard his body, built up of the four elements, as his self, rather than his mind, for it is evident that the body may last for a year, for 2 years, for 3, 4, 5, or 10 years, or even for 100 years and more, but that which is called thought, or mind, or consciousness, arises continuously, during day and night, as one thing, and passes away as another thing. S 22, 5-9. Therefore, whatsoever there is of corporeality, of feeling, of perception, of mental formations, of consciousness, whether past, present, or future, one's own or external, gross or subtle, lofty or low, far or near, of this one should understand according to reality and true wisdom. This does not belong to me. This am I not. This is not myself. To show the impersonality and utter emptiness of existence, Visuddhimagga 16 quotes the following verse: mere suffering exists, no sufferer is found. The deed is, but no doer of the deed is there. Nirvana is, but not the man that enters it. The path is, but no traveler on it is seen. Past, present, and future. D9. If now, anyone should ask, have you been in the past, and is it untrue that you have not been? Will you be in the future, and is it untrue that you will not be? Are you, and is it untrue that you are not? You may reply that you have been in the past, and that it is untrue that you have not been, that you will be in the future, and that it is untrue that you will not be, that you are, and that it is untrue that you are not. In the past, only that past existence was real, but unreal the future and present existence. In the future, only the future existence will be real, but unreal the past and the present existence. Now, only the present existence is real, but unreal the past and future existence. M28. Verily, he who perceives the dependent origination pa.tixca.samup paada perceives the truth, and he who perceives the truth perceives the dependent origination. D8. For just as from the cow comes milk, from milk curd, from curd butter, from butter ghee, from ghee the skim of ghee, and when it is milk, it is not counted as curd, or butter, or ghee, or skim of ghee, but only as milk, and when it is curd, it is only counted as curd. Just so was my past existence at that time real, but unreal the future and present existence, and my future existence will be at that time real, but unreal the past and present existence, and my present existence is now real, but unreal the past and future existence. All these are merely popular designations and expressions, mere conventional terms of speaking, mere popular notions. The perfect one indeed makes use of these kriswai without, however, clinging to them. SXLIV. For thus, he who does not understand corporeality, feeling, perception, mental formations and consciousness according to reality, i.e., as void of a personality or ego, nor understands their arising, their extinction, and the way to their extinction, he is liable to believe either that the perfect one continues after death, or that he does not continue after death, and so forth. The two extremes, annihilation and eternity belief, and the middle doctrines. 12-5. Truly, if one holds the view that the vital principle G, soul, is identical with this body, in that case a holy life is not possible. And if one holds the view that the vital principle is something quite different from the body, in that case also a holy life is not possible. Both these two extremes, the perfect one has avoided, and he has shown the middle doctrine, which says, dependent origination, pa.tikta sam up, paadas 12, 1 on ignorance avijja. Depend the karma formations sankhara, on the karma formations depends consciousness, vi.n.naa.na. Starting with rebirth consciousness in the womb of the mother, on consciousness depends the mental and physical existence, naama-ru, upa, closing parenthesis. On the mental and physical existence depend the 6 sense organs, opening parenthesis, sa.l-aaa, na, closing parenthesis. On the 6 sense organs depends sensorial impression phassa. On sensorial impression depends feeling vedana. On feeling depends craving, opening parenthesis, ta.nhaa, closing parenthesis. On craving depends clinging, upadana. On clinging depends the process of becoming bhava. On the process of becoming here, kama bhava, or karma process, depends rebirth yati. On rebirth depend decay and death, haramarana, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Thus arises this whole mass of suffering. This is called the noble truth of the origin of suffering. No God, no Brahma, can be called a maker of this wheel of life. Empty phenomena roll on, dependent on conditions, all quoted in Visuddhimagga 19s. 12, 51a. Disciple, however, in whom ignorance avijja has disappeared and wisdom arisen, such a disciple heaps up neither meritorious, nor deep, nor imperturbable karma formations. The term sankhara has been rendered here by karma formations because, in the context of the dependent origination, It refers to karmically wholesome and unwholesome volition, cetana, or volitional activity. In short, karma, the threefold division of it, given in the preceding passage, comprises karmic activity in all spheres of existence or planes of consciousness. The meritorious karma formations extend also to the five material sphere rupa, while the imperturbable karma formations in Nyabisankara refer only to the immaterial sphere arupavakara. S. 12:1. Thus, through the entire fading away and extinction of this ignorance, the karma formations are extinguished. Through the extinction of karma formations, consciousness, rebirth, is extinguished. Through the extinction of consciousness, the mental and physical existence is extinguished. Through the extinction of the mental and physical existence, the six sense organs are extinguished. Through the extinction of the six sense organs, sensorial impression is extinguished. Through the extinction of sensorial impression, feeling is extinguished. Through the extinction of feeling, craving is extinguished. Through the extinction of craving, clinging is extinguished. Through the extinction of clinging, the process of becoming is extinguished. Through the extinction of the process of becoming, rebirth is extinguished. Through the extinction of rebirth, decay and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are extinguished. Thus takes place the extinction of this whole mass of suffering. This is called the noble truth of the extinction of suffering. Rebirth producing karma for three truly, because beings obstructed by ignorance avijaya and ensnared by craving tanha seek ever fresh delight. Now here, now there, therefore fresh rebirth continually comes to be. A3:33, and the action kama that is done out of greed, hatred and delusion, labha, dosa, moha, that springs from them, has its source and origin in them. This action ripens wherever one is reborn, and wherever this action ripens, there one experiences the fruits of this action, be it in this life, or the next life, or in some future life. Cessation of karmiyam, for three however, through the fading away of ignorance, through the arising of wisdom, through the extinction of craving, no future rebirth takes place again. A 3:33, for the actions which are not done out of greed, hatred and delusion, which have not sprung from them, which have not their source and origin in them, such actions, through the absence of greed, hatred and delusion, are abandoned, rooted out, like a palm tree torn out of the soil, destroyed, and not able to spring up again. A 8:12. In this respect one may rightly say of me, that I teach annihilation, that I propound my doctrine for the purpose of annihilation, and that I herein train my disciples. For certainly I do teach annihilation, the annihilation, namely, of greed, hatred, and delusion, as well as of the manifold evil and unwholesome things. The Pa.Tik Amapada lit, the dependent origination, is the doctrine of the conditionality of all physical and mental phenomena, a doctrine which, together with that of impersonality and anatta, forms the indispensable condition for the real understanding and realization of the Buddha's teaching. It shows that the various physical and mental life processes, conventionally called personality, man, animal, etc., are not a mere play of blind chance, but the outcome of causes and conditions. Above all, the Pa.Tik Kusamapada explains how the arising of rebirth and suffering is dependent upon conditions, and, in its second part, it shows how, through the removal of these conditions, all suffering must disappear. Hence, the Pa.Tik Kusamapada serves to elucidate the second and the third noble truths, by explaining them from their very foundations upwards, and giving them a fixed philosophical form. The following diagram shows at a glance how the 12 links of the formula extend over 3 consecutive existences, past, present, and future. Past existence 1. Ignorance avijja karma process kamabhava 5 causes. 1, 2, 8, 9, ke-102. Karma formations. Sankara, present existence. 3. Consciousness. Vi. Any na pontunia hebichi process. Apapati bhava 5 results. 3 to 74. Mental and physical. Existence. Namarupa 5. 6 sense organs. Sa.L-AAYATANA. Closing parenthesis 6. Sense impression phasa. 7. Feeling vedana. 8. Craving opening. Parenthesis Ta.Nha. Karma process. Kamabhava 5. Causes 1, 2, 8, 9, 109. clinging upada and a DS process of existence, bhava future existence, 1-1. Rebirth yati, rebirth process, upapati bofa, 5 results, 3 to 712. Decay and death, jaramarana, the links 1 to 2, together with 8 to 10, represent the karma process, containing the 5 karmic causes of rebirth. The links 3 to 7, together with 11 to 12, represent the rebirth process, containing the 5 karma results. Accordingly, it is said in the Patisambhidamagga 5 causes were there in past, 5 fruits we find in present life, 5 causes do we now produce, 5 fruits we reap in future life. Quoted in Vismagga 17 for a full explanation, see Fund 3 and B Dict. Right thought Samasankappa D22. What, now, is right thought? Thought free from lust, Nekamasankappa, thought free from ill will, AVYAAPAA-Sankappa, closing parenthesis. Thought free from cruelty, Avihimsasankappa. This is called right thought, mundane and supermundane thought. 117. Now, right thought, I tell you, is of 2 kinds. 1. Thought free from lust, from ill will, and from cruelty. This is called mundane right thought, Lokiya Samasankappa, which yields worldly fruits and brings good, RCSU 1TS.2. But whatsoever there is of thinking, considering, reasoning, thought, ratiocination, application, the mind being holy, being turned away from the world, and conjoined with the path, the holy path being pursued, these verbal operations of the mind vachis are called the supermundane right thought, Lokatara Samasankappa, which is not of the world, but is super and conjoined with the path, conjoined with other factors. Now, in understanding wrong thought as wrong, and right thought as right, one practices right understanding first factor, and in making efforts to overcome evil thought and to arouse right thought, one practices right effort sixth factor, and in overcoming evil thought with attentive mind, and dwelling with attentive mind in possession of right thought, one practices right mindfulness, seventh factor. Hence there are 3 things that accompany and follow upon right thought, namely, right understanding, right effort, and right mindfulness. Asterisk, right speech, samavaka, what now is right speech? Abstaining from lying. X 1761. Herein someone avoids lying and abstains from it. He speaks the truth, is devoted to the truth, reliable, worthy of confidence, not a deceiver of men. Being at a meeting, or amongst people, or in the midst of his relatives, or in a society, or in the king's court, and called upon and asked as witness to tell what he knows, he answers, if he knows nothing, I know nothing. And if he knows, he answers, I know. If he has seen nothing, he answers, I have seen nothing. And if he has seen, he answers, I have seen. Thus, he never knowingly speaks a lie, either for the sake of his own advantage, or for the sake of another person's advantage, or for the sake of any advantage whatsoever, abstaining from tale-bearing too. He avoids tale-bearing, and abstains from it. What he has heard here, he does not repeat there, so as to cause dissension there. And what he has heard there, he does not repeat here, so as to cause dissension here. Thus he unites those that are divided, and those that are united, he encourages. Concord gladdens him. He delights and rejoices in concord, and it is concord that he spreads by his words. Abstaining from harsh language. 3. He avoids harsh language, and abstains from it. He speaks such words as are gentle, soothing to the ear, loving, such words as go to the heart, and are courteous, friendly, and agreeable to many. In Majjhima Nikaya, no more Duapulusatu, the Buddha says, even O monks, should robbers and murderers saw through your limbs and joints, whosoever should give way to anger thereat, would not be following my advice. For thus ought you to train yourselves. Undisturbed shall our mind remain. No evil words shall escape our lips. Friendly and full of sympathy shall we remain, with heart full of love, and free from any hidden malice. And that person shall we penetrate with loving thoughts, wide, deep, boundless, freed from anger and hatred, abstaining from vain talk. X 1764. He avoids vain talk, and abstains from it. He speaks at the right time, in accordance with facts, speaks what is useful, speaks of the law and the discipline. His speech is like a treasure, uttered at the right moment, accompanied by arguments, moderate and full of sense. This is called right speech, mundane and supermundane speech. 117. Now, right speech, I tell you, is of two kinds. 1. Abstaining from lying, from talebearing, from harsh language, and from vain talk. This is called mundane right speech, Lokia sama afacha, which yields worldly fruits and brings good results. 2. But the avoidance of the practice of this fourfold wrong speech, the abstaining, desisting, refraining therefrom the mind, being holy, being turned away from the world, and conjoined with the path. The holy path being pursued, this is called the supermundane right speech, Lokutara Samafat, which is not of the world, but is and conjoined with the path, conjoined with other factors now. In understanding wrong speech as wrong, and right speech as right, one practices right understanding first factor, and in making efforts to overcome evil speech and to arouse right speech, one practices right effort sixth factor, and in overcoming wrong speech with attentive mind and dwelling with attentive mind in possession of right speech, one practices right mindfulness seventh factor. Hence, there are three things that accompany and follow upon right speech, namely, right understanding, right effort, and right mindfulness. Asterisk, right action, Sama Akamanta, AX 176. What, now, is right action? Abstaining from killing one. Herein someone avoids the killing of living beings and abstains from it, without stick or sword, conscientious, full of sympathy. He is desirous of the welfare of all living beings. Abstaining from stealing too. He avoids stealing and abstains from it. What another person possesses of goods and chattels in the village or in the wood, that he does not take away with thievish intent. Abstaining from unlawful sexual intercourse 3. He avoids unlawful sexual intercourse and abstains from it. He has no intercourse with such persons as are still under the protection of father, mother, brother, sister, or relatives, nor with married women, nor female convicts, nor lastly, with betrothed girls. This is called right action, mundane and supermundane. 117. Now, right action, I tell you, is of two kinds. 1. Abstaining from killing, from stealing, and from unlawful sexual intercourse. This is called the mundane right action, Lokia sama akamanta, which yields worldly fruits and brings good results too. But the avoidance of the practice of this threefold wrong action, the abstaining, desisting, refraining therefrom the mind, being holy, being turned away from the world, and conjoined with the path, the holy path being pursued, this is called the supermundane right action, Lokutara Samakamanta, which is not of the world, but is supermundane, and conjoined with the path, conjoined with other factors. Now, in understanding wrong action as wrong and right action as right, one practices right understanding first factor, and in making efforts to overcome wrong action and to arouse right action, one practices right effort sixth factor, and in overcoming wrong action with attentive mind and dwelling with attentive mind in possession of right action, one practices right mindfulness seventh factor. Hence, there are three things that accompany and follow upon right action, namely, right understanding, right effort, and right mindfulness. Right livelihood, Samojiva. What, now, is right livelihood? D. 221. When the noble disciple, avoiding a wrong way of living, gets his livelihood by a right way of living. This is called right livelihood. In the Majjhima Nikaya No. 117, it is said to practice deceit, treachery, soothsaying, trickery, usury. This is wrong livelihood. And in the Anguttara Nikaya, V177, it is said, 5 trades should be avoided by a disciple: trading in arms, in living beings, in flesh, in intoxicating drinks, and in poison. Included are the professions of a soldier, a fisherman, a hunter, etc. Now, right livelihood, I tell you, is of two kinds, mundane and supermundane. 1171. When the noble disciple, avoiding wrong living, gets his livelihood by a right way of living. This is called mundane right livelihood, Lokya Samajiva, which yields worldly fruits and brings good results. 2. But the avoidance of wrong livelihood, the abstaining, desisting, refraining therefrom the mind, being holy, being turned away from the world, and conjoined with the path, the holy path being pursued, this is called the supermundane right livelihood, Lokutara Samajiva, which is not of the world, but is supermundane and conjoined with the path, conjoined with other factors. Now, in understanding wrong livelihood as wrong and right livelihood as right, one practices right understanding first factor, and in making efforts to overcome wrong livelihood to establish right livelihood, one practices right effort. Sixth factor. And in overcoming wrong livelihood with attentive mind, and dwelling with attentive mind in possession of right livelihood, one practices right mindfulness. Seventh factor. Hence, there are three things that accompany and follow upon right livelihood, namely, right understanding, right effort, and right mindfulness. Asterisk, right effort, Samavayama A4, 13-14. What, now, is right effort? There are four great efforts: the effort to avoid, the effort to overcome, the effort to develop, and the effort to maintain. The effort to avoid SA.MVARA-PPADHAIR, a closing parenthesis. What, now, is the effort to avoid? Herein the disciple rouses his will to avoid the arising of evil, things that have not yet arisen, and he makes efforts, stirs up his energy, exerts his mind and strives. Thus, when Lai perceives a form with the eye, a sound with the ear, and an odor with the nose, a taste with the tongue, an impression with the body, or an object with the mind, he neither adheres to the whole, nor to its parts, and he strives to ward off that through which evil and unwholesome things, greed and sorrow, would arise, if he remained with unguarded senses. And he watches over his senses, restrains his senses. Possessed of this noble control over the senses, he experiences inwardly a feeling of joy, into which no evil thing can enter. This is called the effort to avoid. 2. The effort to overcome Pahanapadana. What, now, is the effort to overcome? There, the disciple rouses his will to overcome the evil, unwholesome things that have already arisen, and he makes effort, stirs up his energy, exerts his mind and strives. He does not retain any thought of sensual lust, ill will or grief, or any other evil and unwholesome states that may have arisen. He abandons them, dispels them, destroys them, causes them to disappear. 5 methods of expelling evil thoughts. 20. If, whilst regarding a certain object, there arise in the disciple, on account of it, evil and unwholesome thoughts connected with greed, hatred and delusion, then the disciple one should by means of this object gain another and wholesome object, or he should reflect on the misery of these thoughts. Unwholesome truly are these thoughts. Blamable are these thoughts. Of painful results are these thoughts. 3. Or he should pay no attention to these thoughts. 4. Or he should consider the compound nature of these thoughts. 5. Or, with teeth clenched and tongue pressed against the gums, he should with his mind restrain, suppress and root out these thoughts. And in doing so, these evil and unwholesome thoughts of greed, hatred and delusion will dissolve and disappear, and the mind will inwardly become settled and calm, composed and concentrated. This is called the effort to overcome. 3. The effort to develop. Afana. 14. Now is the effort to develop. Herein the disciple rouses his will to arouse wholesome things that have not yet arisen, and he makes effort, stirs up his energy, exerts his mind and strives. Thus he develops the elements of enlightenment, Boyanga, based on solitude, on detachment, on extinction, and ending in deliverance, namely, mindfulness, sati, investigation of the law, dhammavichaya, anajiphiria, rapture piti, tranquility pasadi, concentration samadhi, and equanimity, apika. This is called the effort to develop. 4. The effort to maintain anuraha napadahanawa. Now is the effort to maintain. Herein the disciple rouses his will to maintain the wholesome things that have already arisen, and not to allow them to disappear, but to bring them to growth, to maturity, and to the full perfection of development, bhavana. And he makes effort, stirs up his energy, exerts his mind, and strives. Thus, for example, he keeps firmly in his mind a favorable object of concentration that has arisen, such as the mental image of a skeleton, of a corpse infested by worms, of a corpse blue-black in color, of a festering corpse, of a corpse riddled with holes, of a corpse swollen up. This is called the effort to maintain. M70. Truly, for a disciple who is possessed of faith and has penetrated the teaching of the Master, it is fit to think, though skin, sinews and bones wither away, though flesh and blood of my body dry up, I shall not give up my efforts till I have attained whatever is attainable by manly perseverance, energy and endeavor. This is called right effort. A414. The effort of avoiding, overcoming, of developing and maintaining. These 4 great efforts have been shown by him, the scion of the sun, and he who firmly clings to them may put an end to suffering. Right mindfulness samasati. What, now, is right mindfulness? The four foundations of mindfulness sat IPA.T.THAANAD 22. The only way that leads to the attainment of purity, to the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, to the end of pain and grief, to the entering upon the right path and the realization of nibbana, is by the four foundations of mindfulness. And which are these four? Herein the disciple dwells in contemplation of the body, in contemplation of feeling, in contemplation of the mind, in contemplation of the mind objects ardent, clearly comprehending them and mindful, after putting away worldly greed and grief. 1. Contemplation of the body, kaya anupasana. But how does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the body, watching over in and out breathing anapanasati? Herein the disciple retires to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to a solitary place, seats himself with legs crossed, body erect, and with mindfulness fixed before him. Mindfully he breathes in, mindfully he breathes out. When making a long inhalation, he knows, I make a long inhalation. When making a long exhalation, he knows, I make a long exhalation. When making a short inhalation, he knows, I make a short inhalation. When making a short exhalation, he knows, I make a short exhalation. Clearly perceiving the entire breath, body, I shall breathe in. Thus he trains himself. Clearly perceiving the entire breath, body, I shall breathe out. Thus he trains himself. Calming this bodily function, kaya sankara, I shall breathe in. Thus he trains himself. Calming this bodily function, I shall breathe out. Thus he trains himself. Thus he dwells in contemplation of the body, either with regard to his own person, or to other persons, or to both. He beholds how the body arises, beholds how it passes away, beholds the arising and passing away of the body. A body is there, but no living being, no individual, no woman, no man, no self, and nothing that belongs to a self, neither a person, nor anything belonging to a person. Come, this clear awareness is present in him, to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness, and he lives independent, unattached to anything in the world. Thus does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the body, mindfulness of breathing. Anapanasati is one of the most important meditative exercises. It may be used for the development of tranquility samatha vahafana kasatui. For attaining the four absorptions jhana, see the four absorptions on page 67, for the development of insight, vipassana bhavana, or for a combination of both practices. Here, in the context of sat ipa.t.thaan, it is principally intended for tranquilization and concentration preparatory to the practice of insight, which may be undertaken in the following way. After a certain degree of calm and concentration, or one of the absorptions, has been attained through regular practice of mindful breathing, the disciple proceeds to examine the origin of breath. He sees that the inhalations and exhalations are conditioned by the body, consisting of the four material elements and the various corporeal phenomena derived from them. For example, the five sense organs, etc. Conditioned by fivefold sense arises consciousness, and together with it, the three other groups of existence, i.e. feeling, perception, and mental formations. Thus the meditator sees clearly, there is no ego entity or self in this so-called personality, but it is only a corporeal and mental process conditioned by various factors. Thereupon he applies the three characteristics to these phenomena, understanding them thoroughly as impermanent subject to suffering, and impersonal. For further details about Nepa, CM 118.62, Visuddhimagga 83. The four postures and further, whilst going, standing, sitting, or lying down, the disciple understands according to reality the expressions, I go, I stand, I sit, I lie down. He understands any position of the body. The disciple understands that there is no living being, no real ego, that goes, stands, etc., but that it is by a mere figure of speech that one says, I go, I stand, and so forth. Come, mindfulness, and clear comprehension sati sampaja, na, and further, the disciple acts with clear comprehension in going and coming. He acts with clear comprehension in looking forward and backward, acts with clear comprehension in bending and stretching any part of his body, acts with clear comprehension in carrying alms bowl and robes, acts with clear comprehension in eating, drinking, chewing and tasting, acts with clear comprehension in discharging excrement and urine, acts with clear comprehension in walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, awakening, acts with clear comprehension in speaking and keeping silent. In all that the disciple is doing, he has a clear comprehension: 1. Of his intention, 2. Of his advantage, 3. Of his duty, 4. Of the reality. Come. Contemplation of loathsomeness, pa.tkuula-sa tilde, and further, the disciple contemplates this body from the sole of the foot upward, and from the top of the hair downward, with the skin stretched over it, and filled with manifold impurities. This body has hairs of the head and of the body, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, stomach, bowels, mesentery, and excrement, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, lymph, tears, skin grease, saliva, nasal mucus, oil of the joints, and urine, just as if there were a sack, with openings at both ends, filled with various kinds of grain with paddy, beans, sesamum and husked rice, and a man not blind opened it and examined its contents. Thus, that is paddy, these are beans, this is sesamum, this is husked rice. Just so does the disciple investigate this body. Analysts of 4 elements, dhatu and further. The disciple contemplates this body, however it may stand or move, with regard to the elements. This body consists of the solid element, the liquid element, the heating element, and the vibrating element. Just as if a skilled butcher or butcher's apprentice, who had slaughtered a cow and divided it into separate portions, were to sit down at the junction of 4 roads, just so does the disciple contemplate this body with regard to the elements. In Visuddhimagga 13, to this simile is explained as follows: when a butcher rears a cow, brings it to the place of slaughter, binds it to a post, makes it stand up, slaughters it, and looks at the slaughtered cow. During all that time he has still the notion, cow, but when he has cut up the slaughtered cow, divided it into pieces, and sits down near it to sell the meat, the notion, cow, ceases in his mind, and the notion meat arises. He does not think that he is selling a cow or that people buy a cow, but that it is meat that is sold and bought. Similarly, in an ignorant worldling, whether monk or layman, the concepts being man, personality, etc., will not cease until he has mentally dissected this body of his as it stands and moves, and has contemplated it according to its component elements. But when he has done so, the notion, personality, etc., will disappear, and his mind will become firmly established in the contemplation of the elements. Cemetery Meditations 1, and further, just as if the disciple were looking at a corpse thrown on a charnel ground, 1, 2, or 3 days dead, swollen up, blue-black in color, full of corruption, so he regards his own body. This body of mine also has this nature, has this destiny, and cannot escape it. 2, and further, just as if the disciple were looking at a corpse thrown on a charnel ground, eaten by crows, hawks or vultures, by dogs or jackals, or devoured by all kinds of worms, so he regards his own body. This body of mine also has this nature, has this destiny, and cannot escape it. 3, and further, just as if the disciple were looking at a corpse thrown on a charnel ground, a framework of bones, flesh hanging from it, bespattered with blood, held together by the sinews. 4, a framework of bone, stripped of flesh, bespattered with blood, held together by the sinews. 5, a framework of bone, without flesh and blood, but still held together by the sinew. 6 bones, disconnected and scattered in all directions. Here a bone of the hand, there a bone of the foot, there a shin bone, there a thigh bone, there a pelvis, there the spine, there the skull. So he regards his own body. This body of mine also has this nature, has this destiny, and cannot escape it. 7, and further, just as if the disciple were looking at bones lying in the charnel ground, bleached and resembling shells. 8, bones heaped together after the lapse of years. 9, bones weathered and crumbled to dust. So he regards his own body. This body of mine also has this nature, has this destiny, and cannot escape it. Thus he dwells in contemplation of the body, either with regard to his own person, or to other persons, or to both. He beholds how the body arises, beholds how it passes away, beholds the arising and passing away of the body. A body is there, This clear awareness is present in him to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness, and he lives independent, unattached to anything in the world. Thus does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the body, assured of 10 blessings. 119. Once the contemplation of the body is practiced, developed, often repeated, has become one's habit, one's foundation is firmly established, strengthened, and perfected, the disciple may expect 10 blessings. 1. Over delight and discontent, he has mastery. He does not allow himself to be overcome by discontent. He subdues it as soon as it arises. 2. He conquers fear and anxiety. He does not allow himself to be overcome by fear and anxiety. He subdues them as soon as they arise. 3. He endures cold and heat, hunger and thirst, wind and sun, attacks by gadflies, mosquitoes and reptiles. Patiently he endures wicked and malicious speech, as well as bodily pains that befall him, though they be piercing, sharp, bitter, unpleasant, disagreeable, and dangerous to life. 4. The 4 absorptions jhana which purify the mind and bestow happiness even here, these he may enjoy at will, without difficulty, without effort. 6 Psychical powers RBN. Now 5. He may enjoy the different magical powers ID.dhi-vidhaa, closing parenthesis. 6. With the heavenly ear Dibusota, the purified, the superhuman, he may hear both kinds of sounds, the heavenly and the earthly, the distant and the near. 7. With the mind, he may obtain insight into the hearts of other beings Parasachitopariya, NAA.NA of other persons. 8. He may obtain remembrances of many previous births Pubnivisa Nusati tilde, NAA.NA, closing parenthesis. 9. With the heavenly eye, Dibikaku, purified and superhuman, he may see beings vanish and reappear, the base and the noble, the beautiful and the ugly, the happy and the unfortunate. He may perceive how beings are reborn according to their deeds. 10. He may, through the cessation of passions Osavakaya, come to know for himself, even in this life, the stainless deliverance of mind, the deliverance through wisdom. The last 6 blessings, 5 to 10, are the psychical powers RBN. The first 5 of them are mundane, lokia, conditions, and may therefore be attained even by a worldling puthajana, whilst the last RB tilde, N is super mundane, lokotara, and exclusively the characteristic of the Arahat, or Holy One. Is only after the attainment of all the 4 absorptions jhana that one may fully succeed in acquiring the 5 worldly psychical powers. There are 4 idhipada, or bases for obtaining magical powers, namely, concentration of will, concentration of energy, concentration of mind, and concentration of investigation. 2. Contemplation of the feelings, Vedanopasana, D22. But how does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the feelings? In experiencing feelings, the disciple knows, I have an agreeable feeling, or I have a disagreeable feeling, or I have an indifferent feeling, or I have a worldly agreeable feeling, or I have an unworldly agreeable feeling, or I have a worldly disagreeable feeling, or I have an unworldly disagreeable feeling, or I have a worldly indifferent feeling, or I have an unworldly indifferent feeling. Thus he dwells in contemplation of the feelings, either with regard to his own person, or to other persons, or to both. He beholds how the feelings arise, beholds how they pass away, beholds the arising and passing away of the feelings. Feelings are there. This clear awareness is present in him, to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness, and he lives independent, unattached to anything in the world. Thus does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the feelings. The disciple understands that the prepared expression, I feel, has no validity, except as a conventional expression, Vahara. He understands that, in the absolute sense, Param, there are only feelings, and that there is no ego, no experiencer of the feelings. 3. Contemplation of the mind, Sittanupasana. But how does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the mind? Herein the disciple knows the greedy mind as greedy, and the not greedy mind as not greedy, knows the hating mind as hating, and the not hating mind as not hating, knows the deluded mind as deluded, and the undeluded mind as undeluded. He knows the cramped mind as cramped, and the scattered mind as scattered, knows the developed mind as developed, and the undeveloped mind as undeveloped, knows the surpassable mind as surpassable, and the unsurpassable mind as unsurpassable, knows the concentrated mind as concentrated, and the unconcentrated mind as knows the freed mind as freed, and the unfreed mind as unfreed. Citta mind is here used as a collective term for the chittas, or moments of consciousness, chitta being identical with vi, n tilde, naa, or consciousness, should not be translated by thought. Thought and thinking correspond rather to the verbal operations of the mind. Vitika thought conception and vikara discursive thinking, which belong to the Sank, Haara-KKH, and Ha. Thus he dwells in contemplation of the mind, either with regard to his own person, or to other persons, or to both. He beholds how consciousness arises, beholds how it passes away, beholds the arising and passing away of consciousness. Mind is there. This clear awareness is present in him, to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness, and he lives independent, unattached to anything in the world. Thus does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the mind. For contemplation of the mind objects to Monopassana. How does the disciple dwell in contemplation of me? Herein the disciple dwells in contemplation of the mind objects, namely of the 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances, nii-vara.na. 1. He knows when there is lust komakonda in him, in me is lust. Knows when there is anger, vyapada, in him, in me is anger. Knows when there is torpor and sloth, thiamida in him, in me is torpor and sloth. Knows when there is restlessness and mental worry, udahakokuka in him, in me is restlessness and mental worry. Knows when there are doubts, visakaka in him, in me are doubts. He knows when these hindrances are not in him, in me these hindrances are not. He knows how they come to arise, knows how, once arisen, they are overcome, and he knows how they do not rise again in the future. For example, lust arises through unwise thinking on the agreeable and delightful. It may be suppressed by the following 6 methods: fixing the mind upon an idea that arouses disgust, contemplation of the loathsomeness of the body, controlling one's 6 senses, moderation in eating, friendship with wise and good men, right instruction. Lust and anger are forever extinguished upon attainment of anagomiship. Restlessness is extinguished by reaching mental worry, by reaching sotapinship. The 5 groups of existence, Khandha, and further. The disciple dwells in contemplation of the mind objects, namely, of the 5 groups of existence. He knows what corporeality rupa is, how it arises, how it passes away, knows what feeling vedana is, how it arises, how it passes away, knows what perception sana is, how it arises, how it passes away, knows what the mental formations sankara are, how they arise, how they pass away, knows what consciousness naa.na is, how it arises, how it passes away, the ayatana, and further. The disciple dwells in contemplation of the mind objects, namely of the 6 subjective objective sense spaces. He knows the eye and visual objects, ear and sounds, nose and odors, tongue and tastes, body and bodily impressions, mind and mind object, and the fetter that arises in dependence on them. He also knows. He knows how the fetter comes to arise, knows how the fetter is overcome, and how the abandoned fetter does not rise again in future. The 7 elements of enlightenment, bojjhanga. Further, the disciple dwells in contemplation of the mind objects, namely, of the 7 elements of enlightenment. He knows when there is in him mindfulness, sati, investigation of the law, dhammavichaya, energy virya, enthusiasm, piti, tranquility, passaddhi, concentration, samadhi, and equanimity, upeka. He knows when it is not in him, knows how it comes to arise, and how it is fully developed. The 4 noble truths, Aryasaka, and further. The disciple dwells in contemplation of the mind objects, namely, of the 4 noble truths. He knows according to reality what suffering is, knows according to reality what the origin of suffering is, knows according to reality what the extinction of suffering is, knows according to reality what the path is that leads to the extinction of suffering. Thus, he dwells in contemplation of the mind objects, either with regard to his own person, or to other persons, or to both. He beholds how the mind objects arise, beholds how they pass away, beholds the arising and passing away of the mind objects. Mind objects are there, this clear awareness is present in him, to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness, and he lives independent, unattached to anything in the world. Thus does the disciple dwell in contemplation of the mind objects, the only way that leads to the attainment of purity, to the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, to the end of pain and grief, to the entering upon the right path, and the realization of Nibbana is by these four foundations of mindfulness. These four contemplations of Sat IPA.T.THAANA relate to all the five groups of existence, namely, 1. The contemplation of corporeality relates to Rupakanda. 2. The contemplation of feeling, to Veda. 3. The contemplation of mind, to Vi, N, Nonakonda. 4. The contemplation of mind objects, to San, Na and Sank, Haara-KKH, and Ha. For further details about Sat IPA.T.THANAC, the commentary to the discourse of that name, translated in the way of mindfulness by Bhikkhu Soma Kandi, 1967, Buddhist Publication Society, Nibbana, Thruana Apana Satim, 118, watching over, in and out breathing anapanasati, practiced and developed, brings the four foundations of mindfulness to perfection. The four foundations of mindfulness, practiced and developed, bring the 7 elements of enlightenment to perfection. The 7 elements of enlightenment, practiced and developed, bring wisdom and deliverance to perfection. But how does watching over in and out breathing, practiced and developed, bring the four foundations of mindfulness, Sat IPA.T.THAAN, to perfection? Whenever the disciple 1 mindfully makes a long inhalation or exhalation, or 2 makes a short inhalation or exhalation, or 3 trains himself to inhale or exhale whilst experiencing the whole breath, body, or for whilst calming down this bodily function, i.e. the breath, at such a time the disciple dwells in contemplation of the body, full of energy, comprehending it, mindful, after subduing worldly greed and grief. For inhalation and exhalation, I call one amongst the corporeal phenomena. Whenever the disciple trains himself to inhale or exhale 1 whilst feeling rapture, piti, or to joy, sukha, or 3 the mental functions, citta sankhara, or 4, whilst calming down the mental functions, at such a time he dwells in contemplation of the feelings, full of energy, clearly comprehending them, mindful, after subduing worldly greed and grief. For the full awareness of in and out breathing, I call one amongst the feelings. 3. Whenever the disciple trains himself to inhale or exhale, 1 whilst experiencing the mind, or 2 whilst gladdening the mind, or 3 whilst concentrating the mind, or 4 whilst setting the mind free, at such a time he dwells in contemplation of the mind, full of energy, clearly comprehending it, mindful, after subduing worldly greed and grief. 4. Without mindfulness and clear comprehension, I say, there is no watching over in and out breathing.iv. Whenever the disciple trains himself to inhale or exhale, whilst contemplating 1 impermanence, or to the fading away of passion, or 3 extinction, or 4 detachment, at such a time he dwells in contemplation of the mind objects, full of energy, clearly comprehending them, mindful, after subduing worldly greed and grief. Having seen, through understanding, what is the abandoning of greed and grief, he looks on with complete equanimity, watching over in and out breathing. Thus practiced and developed, brings the 4 foundations of mindfulness to perfection. But how do the 4 foundations of mindfulness, practiced and developed, bring the 7 elements of enlightenment, Boyanga, to full perfection? 1. Whenever the disciple dwells in contemplation of body, feelings, mind and mind objects, strenuous, clearly comprehending them, mindful, after subduing worldly greed and grief, at such a time his mindfulness is undisturbed, and whenever his mindfulness is present and undisturbed, at such a time he has gained and develops the element of enlightenment, mindfulness, sati sambhuja, and thus this element of enlightenment reaches fullest perfection. 2. And whenever whilst dwelling with mindfulness, he wisely investigates, examines and thinks over the Lord Dhamma, at such a time he has gained and develops the element of enlightenment, investigation of the law, Dhammavicaya Sambojjhanga, and thus this element of enlightenment reaches fullest perfection. 3. and whenever, whilst wisely investigating, examining, and thinking over the law, his energy is firm and unshaken, at such a time he has gained and develops the element of enlightenment energy, Virius, and thus this element of enlightenment reaches fullest perfection. 4. And whenever in him, whilst firm in energy, arises supersensuous rapture, such a time he has gained and develops the element of enlightenment, Rapture Piti Sambojanga, and thus this element of enlightenment reaches fullest perfection. 5. And whenever, whilst enraptured in mind, his spiritual frame and his mind become tranquil, at such a time he has gained and develops the element of enlightenment, tranquility, Pasadi Sambojanga, and thus this element of enlightenment reaches fullest perfection. 6. And whenever, whilst being tranquilized in his spiritual frame and happy, his mind becomes concentrated, at such a time he has gained and develops the element of enlightenment, concentration Sama Adhisambojanga, and thus this element of enlightenment reaches fullest perfection. 7. And whenever he looks with complete indifference on his mind, thus concentrated, that such a time he has gained and develops the element of enlightenment, equanimity, Upaka Sambhu, and thus this element of enlightenment reaches fullest perfection. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, thus practiced and developed, bring the 7 elements of enlightenment to full perfection. And how do the 7 elements of enlightenment, practiced and developed, bring wisdom and deliverance, via vimutti, to full perfection? Herein the disciple develops the elements of enlightenment, mindfulness, investigation of the law, energy, rapture, tranquility, concentration and equanimity, based on detachment, on absence of desire, on extinction and renunciation. The 7 elements of enlightenment thus practiced and developed bring wisdom and deliverance to full perfection. M.125 Just as the elephant hunter drives a huge stake into the ground and chains the wild elephant to it by the neck, in order to drive out of him his wanted forest ways and wishes, his forest unruliness, obstinacy and violence, and to accustom him to the environment of the village, and to teach him such good behavior as is required amongst men, in like manner also should the noble disciple fix his mind firmly to these 4 foundations of mindfulness, so that he may drive out of himself his wanted worldly ways and wishes, his wanted worldly unruliness, obstinacy and violence, and win to the true and realize Nibbana. Right concentration, Samasamaradi M44. What, now, is right concentration? Its definition: having the mind fixed to a single object, sitikigata lit, one-pointedness of mind. This is concentration. Right concentration, samo, in its widest sense, is the kind of mental concentration which is present in every wholesome state of consciousness, kasalichita, and hence is accompanied by at least right thought, 2nd factor, right effort, 6th factor, and right mindfulness, 7th factor. Wrong concentration is present in unwholesome states of consciousness, and hence is only possible in the sensuous, not in a higher sphere. Samadhi, used alone, always stands in the sutta for samasamadhi, or right concentration. Its objects the 4 foundations of mindfulness, 7th factor. These are the objects of concentration. Its requisites there for great efforts, 6th factor. These are the requisites for concentration. Its development, the practicing, developing and cultivating of these things. This is the development, bhavana, of concentration. Right concentration, samasamanadi, has 2 degrees of development. 1. Neighborhood concentration, upach, which approaches the first absorption without, however, attaining it. 2. Attainment concentration, apanasamad, which is the concentration present in the 4 absorptions, jhana. These absorptions are mental states beyond the reach of the 5-fold sense activity, attainable only in solitude and by unremitting perseverance in the practice of concentration. In these states all activity of the 5 senses is suspended. No visual or audible impressions arise at such a time. No bodily feeling is felt. But, although all outer sense impressions have ceased, yet the mind remains active, perfectly alert, fully awake. The attainment of these absorptions, however, is not a requisite for the realization of the 4 supermundane paths of holiness, and neither neighborhood concentration nor attainment concentration, as such, possesses the power of conferring entry to the 4 supermundane paths. Hence they really have no power to free one permanently from evil things. The realization of the 4 supermundane paths is possible only at the moment of deep insight, vipassana, into the impermanency, anakkata, miserable nature, dukkata, and impersonality anattata of this whole phenomenal process of existence. This insight, again, is attainable only during neighborhood concentration, not during attainment concentration. He who has realized one or other of the four supermundane paths without ever having attained the absorptions is called Sukha-vipassana or Suddha-vipassananika, i.e. one who has taken merely insight vipassana as his vehicle. He, however, who, after cultivating the absorptions, has reached one of the supermundane paths is called Sanyatyanika, or one who has taken tranquility, samatha, as his vehicle yana. For samatha and vipassana, see Fund 4, and B. Diet, for absorptions jhana d. 2-2 detached from sensual objects, detached from evil things, the disciple enters into the first absorption, which is accompanied by thought conception and discursive thinking, is born of detachment and filled with rapture and happiness. This is the first of the absorptions, belonging to the fine material sphere rupa avasharadana. It is attained when, through the strength of concentration, the fivefold sense activity is temporarily suspended, and the five hindrances are likewise eliminated. CB dict synonymita, samadhyam, 4-3. This first absorption is free from five things, and five things are present. When the disciple enters the first absorption, there have vanished the five hindrances: lust, ill will, torpor and sloth, restlessness and mental worry, doubts, and there are present thought conception, vitakka, discursive thinking, rapture, piti, happiness, sukha, concentration, chitta-ekagata, samadhi. These five mental factors present in the first absorption are called factors or constituents of absorption: vitakka, initial formation of an abstract thought, and vikara, discursive thinking. Rumination are called verbal functions, vacha-sankhara, of the mind. Hence they are something secondary compared with consciousness. In visuddhi is compared with the taking hold of a pot, and vikara with the wiping of it. In the first absorption both are present, but are exclusively focused on the subject of meditation. Vikara being here not discursive, but of an exploring nature. Both are entirely absent in the following absorptions. And further, after the subsiding of thought conception and discursive thinking, and by the gaining of inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters into a state free from thought conception and discursive thinking, the second absorption, which is born of concentration samadhi, and filled with rapture, piti and happiness, sukha. In the second absorption, there are three factors of absorption: rapture, happiness, and concentration. And further, after the fading away of rapture, he dwells in equanimity, mindful, with clear awareness, and he experiences in his own person that feeling of which the noble ones say, "Happy lives he who is equanimous and mindful." Thus he enters the third absorption. In the third absorption there are two factors of absorption: equanimous, happiness, upaga sukha, and concentration, citta-ekagata. And further, after the giving up of pleasure and pain, and through the disappearance of previous joy and grief, he enters into a state beyond pleasure and pain, into the fourth absorption, which is purified by equanimity and mindefuel. And he says, in the fourth absorption there are two factors of absorption: concentration and equanimity. Upika, in Visuddhi Magga, 40 subjects of meditation, Kamma.T.Thaan, are enumerated and treated in detail. By their successful practice the following absorptions may be attained. All four absorptions. Through mindfulness of breathing, see Vsm 8.3. The 10 casino exercises, Vsm 4, VNB. Dict. The contemplation of equanimity, Upika, being the practice of the fourth Brahmavihara, Wisem, X4. The first three absorptions. Through the development of loving kindness, met, compassion, karuna, and sympathetic joy, mudita, being the practice of the first three Brahmaviharas, Visem Ix 1, 2, 3, closing parenthesis. The first absorption, through the 10 contemplations of impurity, asubhobhavana, i.e. the cemetery contemplations, which are 10, according to the enumeration in Visem Vi, the contemplation of the body, i.e. the 32 parts of the body, Vism 8, 2, neighborhood concentration, upakara samadhi, through the recollections on Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, on morality, liberality, heavenly beings, peace equals nibbana, and death with MV7, the contemplation on the loathsomeness of food, Wisem Shi, I, the analysis of the four elements, Bs, no ben and dos, the four immaterial absorptions, arupajana, or which are based on the fourth absorption, are produced by meditating on their respective objects from which they derive their names. Sphere of unbounded space, of unbounded consciousness, of nothingness, and of neither perception nor nan perception. The entire object of concentration and meditation is treated in Viz M3. See also Fund 4822. 5. Develop your concentration, for he who has concentration understands things according to their reality. And what are these things? The arising and passing away of corporeality, of feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. M 149. Thus, these 5 groups of existence must be wisely penetrated, ignorance and craving must be wisely abandoned, tranquility samatha and insight vipassana must be wisely developed. S. 56. This is the middle path which the Perfect One has discovered, which makes one both to see and to know, and which leads to peace, to discernment, to enlightenment, to nibbana. DHP 275. And following upon this path, you will put an end to suffering. Gradual development of the Eightfold Path in the progress of the disciple confidence and right thought. Second factor. M. 38. Suppose a householder, or his son, or someone reborn in a good family, hears the law, and after hearing the law he is filled with confidence in the Perfect One, and filled with this confidence, he thinks full of hindrances is household life, a refuse heap. But the homeless life of a monk is like the open air. Not easy is it, when one lives at home, to fulfill in all points the rules of the holy life. How, if now I were to cut off hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and go forth from home to the homeless life, and in a short time, having given up his possessions, great or little, having forsaken a large or small circle of relations, he cuts off hair and beard, puts on the yellow robe, and goes forth from home to the homeless life. Morality. Third. Fourth. Fifth factor. Having thus left the world, he fulfills the rules of the monks. He avoids the killing of living beings and abstains from it. Without stick or sword, conscientious, full of sympathy, he is desirous of the welfare of all living beings. He avoids stealing and abstains from taking what is not given to him. Only what is given to him he takes, waiting till it is given, and he lives with a heart honest and pure. He avoids unchastity, living chaste, celibate, and aloof from the vulgar practice of sexual intercourse. He avoids lying and abstains from it. He speaks the truth, is devoted to the truth, reliable, worthy of confidence, no deceiver of men. He avoids tale-bearing and abstains from it. What he has heard here, he does not repeat there, so as to cause dissension there. And what he has heard there, he does not repeat here, so as to cause dissension here. Thus he unites those that are divided, and those that are united he encourages. Concord gladdens him. He delights and rejoices in concord, and it is concord that he spreads by his words. He avoids harsh language and abstains from it. He speaks such words as are gentle, soothing to the ear, loving, such words as go to the heart, and are courteous, friendly, and agreeable to many. He avoids vain talk and abstains from it. He speaks at the right time, in accordance with facts, speaks what is useful, speaks of the law and the discipline. His speech is like a treasure, uttered at the right moment, accompanied by arguments, moderate and full of sense. He takes food only at one time of the day, forenoon, abstains from food in the evening, does not eat at improper times. He leaps, aloof from dance, song, music, and the visiting of shows. Rejects flowers, perfumes, ointment, as well as every kind of adornment and embellishment. High and gorgeous beds he does not use. Gold and silver he does not accept. He does not accept raw corn and flesh, women and girls, male and female slaves, or goats, sheep, fowls, pigs, elephants, cows or horses, or land and goods. He does not go on errands and do the duties of a messenger. He eschews buying and selling things. He has nothing to do with false measures, metals and weights. He avoids the crooked ways of bribery, deception and fraud. He has no part in stabbing, beating, chaining, attacking, plundering and oppressing. He contents himself with the robe that protects his body, and with the alms bowl by means of which he keeps himself alive. Wherever he goes, he is provided with these two things, just as a winged bird in flying carries his wings along with him. By fulfilling this noble domain of morality, Sila Kukonda, he feels in his heart an irreproachable happiness. Control of the senses, sixth factor now. In perceiving a form with the eye, a sound with the ear, an odor with the nose, a taste with the tongue, an impression with the body, an object with the mind, he cleaves neither to the whole nor to its details, and he tries to ward off that which, should he be unguarded in his senses, might give rise to evil and unwholesome states, to greed and sorrow. He watches over his senses, keeps his senses under control. By practicing this noble control of the senses, indriya-sa.mvra, he feels in his heart an unblemished happiness. Mindfulness and clear comprehension, seventh factor. He is mindful and acts with clear comprehension when going and coming, when looking forward and backward, when bending and stretching his limbs, when wearing his robes and alms bowl, when eating, drinking, chewing and tasting, when discharging excrement and urine, when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, and awakening, when speaking and keeping silent. Now being equipped with this lofty morality, equipped with this noble control of the senses, indriya-sa.mvra, and filled with this noble mindfulness and clear comprehension, satisampaja, he chooses a secluded dwelling in the forest, at the foot of a tree, on a mountain, in a cleft, in a rock cave, on a burial ground, on a wooded tableland, in the open air, or on a heap of straw. Having returned from his alms round, after the meal, he seats himself with legs crossed, body erect, with mindfulness fixed before him, absence of the five hindrances, vara.na. He has cast away lust, he dwells with a heart free from lust. From lust he cleanses his heart. He has cast away ill will via pada. He dwells with a heart free from ill will, cherishing love and compassion toward all living beings. He cleanses his heart from ill will. He has cast away torpor and sloth, thenomita. He dwells free from torpor and sloth, loving the light, with watchful mind, with clear comprehension. He cleanses his mind from torpor and sloth. He has cast away restlessness and mental worry, udhat kukuka, dwelling with mind undisturbed, with heart full of peace. He cleanses his mind from restlessness and mental worry. He has cast away doubt, visakaka, dwelling free from doubt, full of confidence in the good. He cleanses his heart from doubt. The absorption's eighth factor, he has put aside these five hindrances. Vara.na, the corruptions of the mind which paralyze wisdom, and far from sensual impressions, far from evil things, he enters into the four absorptions jhana. Insight, vipassana. First, factor A, IX 36, but whatsoever there is of corporeality, feeling, perception, mental formations, or consciousness, all these phenomena he regards as impermanent anicca, subject to pain, dukkha, as infirm, as an ulcer, a thorn, a misery, a burden, an enemy, a disturbance, as empty and void of an ego anatta. And turning away from these things, he directs his mind towards the deathless. Thus, this, truly, is peace. This is the highest, namely the end of all karma formations, the forsaking of every substratum of rebirth, the fading away of craving, detachment, extinction, nibbana. And in this state he reaches the cessation of passions, Osivakaya Nibbanam 39, and his heart becomes free from sensual passion, Kamasava, free from the passion for existence, Bhavasava, free from the passion of ignorance, Avij, freedomite. This knowledge arises in the liberated one, and he knows, exhausted is rebirth, fulfilled the holy life. What was to be done, has been done. Naught remains more for this world to do. Single quotes. M.264 Ever am I liberated. This is the last time that I'm born. No new existence waits for me. M140. This is, indeed, the highest, holiest wisdom, to know that all suffering has passed away. This is, indeed, the highest, holiest peace, appeasement of greed, hatred and delusion. The silent thinker I am is a vain thought. This am I is a vain thought. I shall be is a vain thought. I shall not be is a vain thought. Vain thoughts are a sickness, an ulcer, a thorn. But after overcoming all vain thoughts, one is called a silent thinker. And the thinker, the silent one, does no more arise, no more pass away, no more tremble, no more desire. For there is nothing in him whereby he should arise again. And as he arises no more, how should he grow old again? And as he grows old no more, how should he die again? And as he dies no more, how should he tremble? And as he trembles no more, how should he have desire? The true goal. 9. Hence, the purpose of the holy life does not consist in acquiring alms, honor, or fame, nor in gaining morality, concentration, or the eye of knowledge. That unshakable deliverance of the heart, that indeed is the object of the holy life, that is its essence, that is its goal. 51. And those who in the past were holy and enlightened ones, those blessed ones also have pointed out to their disciples this self-same goal, as has been pointed out by me to my disciples. And those who in the future will be holy and enlightened ones, those blessed ones also will point out to their disciples this self-same goal, as has been pointed out by me to my disciples. D16. However, disciples, it may be that after my passing away you might think, gone is the doctrine of our Master. We have no Master more. But thus you should not think, for the law Dhamma and the discipline Vinaya which I have taught you, will after my death be your Master. The law be your isle, the law be your refuge, look for no other refuge. Therefore, disciples, the doctrines which I taught you after, having penetrated them myself, you should well preserve, well guard, so that this holy life may take its course and continue for ages. For the weal and welfare of the many, as a consolation to the world, for the happiness, weal and welfare of heavenly beings and men. Buddhist literature selection for further study. I. Life of the Buddha. H. Brewster. The Life of Gautama, the Buddha. Compiled from the Pali Canon. London. Keegan, Paul Narada. Thera. The Life of the Buddha, in his own words. Colombo. Yaimambi. Anenename. Thomas. The Life of Buddha as Legend and History. London. Keegan Paul. Bikusilachara. A Young People's Life of the Buddha. Colombo. W. F. Bastian and Company. Edwin Arnold. The Light of Asia. Poetical. Many editions. Pivadasi Thera. The Buddha, a short study of his life and his teachings. Kandy. Buddhist Publication Society. Kassapa Thera and Siridharma Thera. The Life of the Buddha. Colombo, 1958. Department of Cultural Affairs. II. Translations from the Sutta Pitaka 1. Anthologies. H. C. Warren. Buddhism in Translations. 496 pp. Harvard Oriental Series. F. L. Woodward. Some Sayings of the Buddha. Oxford Press. E. J. Thomas. Early Buddhist Scriptures. London. Keegan Paul. Nyanatiloka Mahathera. The Path to Deliverance. Colombo. Lake House Bookshop. David Morris. The Lion's Roar, an anthology of the Buddha's teaching. Ryder & Co. Selected Buddhist texts from the Pali Canon. Sutta translations from the Wheel series. Vol. Ili Buddhist Publication Society. KANDY. 2. Complete texts. Prof. T.W. Rhys Davids. T.R. Dialogues of the Buddha Digha Nikaya. London. Polytext Society. 3. VOLSIB. Horner. T.R. The Middle-Length Sayings. Majjhima Nikaya Polytext Society. 3. VOLS. F.L. Woodward and F. M. Hare T.R. Grajua Sayings. Anguttara Nikaya Polytext Society. 5. VOL. SCAF. Rhys Davids and F.L. Woodward. T.R. Kindred. Sayings SA.myutta Nikaya Polytext Society. Lima Vowels. Narada Thera. T.R. Dhammapada. Poly. Text with English prose translation. Wisdom of the East series. John Murray. Professor S. Radhakrishnan. T.R. Dhammapada. London. George Allen and Unwin. F.M. Hare. T.R. Woven Cadences. Sutta Nipata. Sacred Books of the Buddhists. Polytext Society. F.L. Woodward. T.R. Minor Anthologies. Volume 2. Udana and Itavut. Sacred Books of the Buddhists. Polytext Society. CAF Rhys Davids. T.R. Songs of the Brethren. Theragatha. Polytext Society. CAF Rhys Davids. T.R. Songs of the Sisters. Theragatha. Polytext Society. 3. Single Discourses Soma Thera. The Way of Mindfulness translated. Of the Satipatthana Sutta and its commentary. 3rd ed. Buddhist Publication Society. Soma Thera. Right Understanding. Translated. Of the 9th Discourse of Majjhima Nikaya and its commentary. Colombo. Lake House Bookshop. The Wheel series contains annotated translations of many discourses. Buddhist Publication Society. Tiga. Abhidhamma Nyanatiloka Mahathera, Guide through the Abhidhamma Pi.tak synopsis of all 7 Abhidhamma books. 3rd ed. Colombo, 1971. Lakehouse Bookshop, Narada Thera, A Manual of Abhidhammatha Sangha, Pali text, translation and explanatory notes. 2nd ed. Buddhist Publication Society, Shui Zan Ong and CAF Rhys Davids, TR Compendium of Philosophy. Abhidhamma Polytext Society, Dr. W. F. Jayasuriya, The Psychology and Philosophy of Buddhism, An Introduction to the Abhidhamma. M.D. Gunasena, Danko, Colombo, Anagorika, B. Govinda, Psychological Attitude of Early Buddhist Philosophy and its Systematic Representation According to Abhidhamma Tradition. Ryder & Co. Nyanatiloka Abhidhamma Studies, Researches in Buddhist Psychology. 2nd Enlarged ed. Kandy, Buddhist Publication Society. IV, Non-Canonical, Pali Literature, B. Horner, T.R., Melinda's Questions, 2 vols, Polytext Society, T.W., Rhys Davids, T.R., The Alestians of King Melinda, 2 vols, Dover Books, Buddha Gasabiku, Nonamoli, T.R., The Path of Purification, Vasudhi, Magar, 2nd ed., Asemij, Colombo, The Most Important and Comprehensive Systematic Treatment of the Entire Buddhist Teachings, v. Historical Literature B.C., Law, History of Pali Literature, 2 vols, London, Keegan, PAULSC, Banerjee, An Introduction to Pali Literature, Panthi, CALCUTTAMY Internets, History of Indian Literature, Volume 2, Buddhist and Jain Literature, Calcutta UNIVERSITYTW, Rhys Davids, Buddhist India, F.J. Thomas, History of Buddhist Thought, London, Keegan, PAULGP, Malala Sakura, Pali Literature of Ceylon M.D., Gunasena & Co., COLOMBOEW, Adhikaram, Early History of Buddhism in Ceylon, Colombo, 1946, Lakehouse Bookshop, H.R. Pereira, Buddhism in Ceylon, Its Past and Present, Buddhist Publication Society, Karuna, Kusat, Buddhism in Thailand, Its Past and Present, Buddhist Publication Society, v. General Literatura Nyanatiloka Mahathera, Buddhist Dictionary, A Manual of Buddhist Terms and Doctrines, 3rd Enlarged ed., Fruin & Co., Colombo, 1971, Nyanatiloka Mahathera, Fundamentals of Buddhism, for Lectures, Lakehouse Bookshop, Colombo, Pigadasi Thera, The Buddha's Ancient Path, Ryder & Co. Nyanasatta, Thera, Basic Tenets of Buddhism, Aids to the Study and Teaching of the Dhamma, Ananda Semij, Colombo 11.narada Thera, Buddhism in a Nutshell, Buddhist Publication Society, Hanti Palo, Bhikkhu, Buddhism Explained, An Introduction to the Teaching of Lord Buddha, Social Science Association Press, Bangkok, Dr. Walpole, Rahula, What the Buddha Taught, Gordon Fraser, Oxford, also Grove Press, NYR-GDS, Wetamuni, Buddhism and its Relation to Religion and Science, M.D., Gunasena & Co., Colombo, Nyanaponika, Thera, The Heart of Buddhist Meditation Sat IPA.T.THAN, 3rd Enlarged ed., Writer and COP Vatra Nana Mahathera, Buddhist Meditation in Theory and Practice, M.D. Gunasena & Co., Colombo, Nanamoli Thera, Mindfulness of Breathing, Buddhist Texts from the Pali Canon and Commentaries, Buddhist Publication Society, KNGA Tilak, Early Buddhist Theory of Knowledge, George Allen and Onwin, G.P. Malalas, Sekara, ed., Encyclopedia of Buddhism, Volume 1, Volume 2, Fask, 1 ff, to be continued, published by the Government of Ceylon Distributors, KVG De Silva and Sons, Colombo, closing parenthesis, .vii. Periodicals, The Mahabodhi, a monthly journal for International Buddhist Brotherhood, Calcutta, Mahabodhi Society, The Middle Way, a quarterly organ of the Buddhist Society, London, WCI, the Buddhist monthly organ of the Colombo YMBA Colombo, World Buddhism, monthly International Buddhist News Magazine, published at 91/1 Dutagamunu Estadahiwala, Ceylon. Works of the author in English, The Word of the Buddha Abridged Students Edition, Colombo, 1946, YMBA Guide through the Abhidhammopataka, 3rd ed., Colombo, 1971, Lakehouse Bookshop, Fundamentals of Buddhism. For lectures, Colombo 1949 Lake House Bookshop. Buddhist Dictionary. Manual of Buddhist Terms and 3rd ed. Colombo 1971. Fruin & Co. Ltd. Path to Deliverance. 2nd ed. Colombo 1959. Lake House Bookshop. The Buddha's Teaching of Egolessness. Colombo 1957. The Influence of Buddhism on a People. Kandy 1958. Buddhist Publication Society. In German Das Wort, Day, Buddha, 1906 f. Constance 1953 Angotaraneka Trans. 5 volúmenes. 1906 f. Reprint 1969 Melindapa, now translated, to Vowels. 606 pp. 1918 f. Dhammapada, Polytext, metrical translated, commentary. In Ms. Pugala, P.A. tilde, N. Nati translated, 1910, Abhidhamma Sangha, Kornpendi, der Buddhistischen Philosophie in MS Vesudi, Maga complete translated, Constance 1952, Faradurch das, Abhidhammapitaka in MS Systematische Palagrammatik, 1911, Polyanthology, Umed Waterbuck, Anthology and Glossary, 2 vols, 1928, Grundelbrende, Buddhismus, in MS closing parenthesis, .wegzo, Erlosong Path to Deliverance, Constance 1956 Buddhist Dishes, Wörterbuch, Constance 1957, asterisk,